What's going on, guys? Yash Talalakar here, back with another video on the Winning Browns podcast. Akhilesh here. We are back once again. Today, we're going to do a very interesting video, something we haven't done in the past, but kind of have already dabbled in a little bit, if you may. We always love debating. We always love throwing shade at each other because, of course, that is what two people on the same podcast do. But hey, as we get more into a politically divided country as we've seen some very entertaining videos on some other YouTube channels, specifically one Jubilee, um, in the midst
Yeah.
of a very highly viewed and very highly controversial um, video set by Jubilee called 20 far-right conservatives versus Mehdi Hassan, which, I mean, I'm not going to say anything about it. You guys can go watch the video if you want. Um, but there's a reason why those types of videos have been for sure very viewed. And there was one as far as sports a few weeks ago when it came to Skip Bayless versus 20 NBA and NFL fans. House of Highlights are starting to do videos like that. And based on just the popularity that these sort of videos have had recently, Akhilesh and I thought, why not try this on this channel? Obviously, we're only two people. We don't have 21 people. But we
Right.
could try the same time style debate. And, I think it'll be kind of fun as far as there are a few topics Akhilesh and I have debated and wanted to debate in the past
Right.
on this podcast, but just for the sake of time, haven't been able to go in full depth. And now we get a chance to debate some of these. So, I mean, we'll start off today with some very fun topics, and we'll go from there talking about some other teams as far as kind of a bracket at the end of it. But we'll start off with the Jubilee style video.
Right.
And I mean, if we want to start, I'll start off with the first take.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
the
Yeah.
first take I have, and this is we'll time this with 10 minutes. I'll put a timer for 10 minutes while we're talking.
All right.
So whenever you're ready, um,
Okay.
here we go. So 10 minutes, right? There we go. Yeah. So my first take in general is Fred Warner is currently the best defensive player in the entire NFL.
Okay, first off, Fred Warner was at one point the best defensive player in the NFL. Now, if we're being completely honest, Fred Warner is not the best defensive player in the NFL without the guys around him. You lose key aspects on your overall defense right now. Talwana Hufanga, if I'm not mistaken, that's how he pronounced his name. He's not the same guy he was a couple of years ago. Nick Bosa is not producing the same amount he used to before. Fred Warner is the best player he is based on the players he has around him. Right now, he's lost a lot of guys. You're bringing back in a defense. You're trying to improve the defense overall. Right now is not where he's going to be the best. The best is when he's got his guys around him. He doesn't have his guys around him. If you observe last season specifically, age is getting to him. The overall agility is slowing down. He's a smarter player without a doubt, but the
Hmm.
overall speed in which with he flows not as great. Tackling ability pretty much close to as what it was before, but it's not the same level. If you want to pick out the best defensive player in the NFL right now, without a doubt for me, it's got to be Myles Garrett. The production is insane. Agility, overall athletic ability above Fred Warner by Miles. He's also a young guy, attacks the ball, attacks the quarterback furiously. I mean, give me one guy that's going to guard Fred Warner. I mean, not Fred Warner, sorry, Myles Garrett, and stop him from getting a sack. Eagles can't do it. I don't know what other O line you want to put against it. Nobody can do it. That's how dominant this guy is. Myles Garrett's the best defensive player. Now, this isn't like a horrible take. I mean, you're a 49ers fan. You're trying to support the kingdom. They're in a tough situation right now.
Well, I
I get it.
genuinely do think Fred Warner.
But
I would have said Myles Garrett probably about a half a year ago, but I do think
I,
just
I
based
wouldn't say
on
so now. I
no.
mean, come on. The way his production level on that horrible defense, the way they played, the way he played this season, regardless of the number of injuries, concerns, drama around that team, the way he played, I think you got to give it to Myles Garrett. Heart, sure, you can give it to Fred Warner and all this emotional being, but as Kevin says on Shark Tank, it's not about emotion when it comes to money. It's money. Money means business. So in this case, Myles Garrett.
Okay, so I'll go over a couple things you mentioned. First off, yeah, I agree with you that the agility is going down. I'm not going to argue on that standpoint. First off, we can agree that athleticism isn't necessarily indicative of a player's skill ability at any position, right? Ray Lewis, he was an athletic linebacker, but as he got older, his athleticism
Not
also
not the
diminished.
same.
But
Not
at
the
the same
same.
time, he was
You
still
can't
smart.
put that in today's game. But okay.
Well, what I would argue with the case of Fred Warner is that as his athleticism and his agility has diminished, he's still making the same types of plays that he was in the
Okay.
past. His coverage ability, in spite of his agility, has improved over the last year and a half. You're talking about a guy who is better as far as baiting tight ends and baiting receivers into bad positions, getting
How many
into quarter.
interceptions did he have this year?
He had two interceptions and he had seven passes defended.
Last year?
Uh-huh. So there's no
No,
doubt. So
I'm
there's
talking about the year before that.
yes,
Sorry,
he did.
I'll
Well,
put up
yes,
myself, guys. I'm sorry.
he did
Let
have
me pull
four
up.
interceptions and 11 passes defended. I'll give you that.
So what's better?
Well, what is better at the end of the day is his ability to actually, when you look at the film, as far as his ability to be in place, in position for the right play, make sure that the quarterback does not throw in those areas. He's essentially become like a lockdown corner in that sense. He's forcing quarterbacks to start not throwing to their tight ends, especially better some of the better tight ends in the league just based on his specific position. And he did so
Josh,
this year without Dre Greenlaw for majority of the year, right? So we're talking about a guy who, in spite of not having his partner in crime, is
sure.
still able to basically cover down an entire level of a defense. Three guys, usually two, three guys, and he has been able to do all of that damage by himself. Then you add
So
in the
what? Luke Kuechly did that his entire career. He was never the best defensive player in the NFL.
I would argue there were a very few years that he was. And this is the other argument I would make when it came to that. First off, there was a good portion where Luke Kuechly was overshadowed by a defensive player by the name of J.J. Watt, who happened
Right.
to play at the same time as him, and then later on Aaron Donald.
Exactly. And
Okay,
in this case, Fred Warner is being overshadowed by overtime, Aaron Donald, Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, bunch of just huge edge rushers who dominated the game that Fred Warner wasn't even close to.
so when
That's
it
the
comes to
facts.
go, okay, I'm glad you mentioned that. So
Okay.
when it comes to Myles Garrett, okay, the difference
Mhm.
between Myles Garrett and J.J. Watt and Aaron Donald and those years that they were,
Mhm.
okay, is
Mhm.
tremendous. All right, Aaron Donald, yeah, I mean,
Well, you mentioned Myles Garrett because I mentioned Myles Garrett's the best right now, but you also
right.
forgot TJ Watt,
Well,
22
even
and a half
TJ Watt.
sacks.
Okay, TJ Watt a few years ago, still. I mean, if I can bring up the numbers even with TJ Watt, I'll bring
Sure.
up them for a sec. Give me a sec. Um, yeah, so TJ Watt, if we're talking about 2023 over
Mm,
Fred Warner, 100%. I could agree with that based on the fact that
right.
he's coming off of three of the last four seasons. He's led the league in sacks. The only year he
Okay.
didn't was he had 5.5 sacks in 10 games and he got hurt, obviously, right?
Right.
But this is a
Right.
year where his numbers, if you're talking about Fred Warner and his numbers going down,
Mm.
TJ Watt's numbers went down that
How about
much.
triple teams? How about
Huh?
triple teams? You don't want to mention that? Triple
Well,
teams,
if we're mentioning,
double tight end blocks plus a tackle,
well,
plus a
from
running back. We don't
Well,
want to
from
talk about that?
well, you can make that argument for a linebacker. Linebacker is a little different than a defensive end from that standpoint. A
Doesn't
defensive end
matter.
has more.
See, Josh, okay, stat wise, yes, it really hasn't gone down that much.
Hmm.
132 tackles last season. The
Sure.
year before, he had 132 tackles as well.
Hmm.
All I'll say is this: if we're calling him one of the best defensive players, Ray Lewis, and you talk about the class linebackers,
Hmm.
TFL wise, 8 and above,
Yeah.
right? When you talk about their best seasons, 8 and above.
Hmm.
This man hasn't hit eight yet. On average, this man hasn't hit eight yet. And
That's
you
where I
look at the
disagree with you.
numbers right now, TFL wise, 5 TFLs last year, only two quarterbacks hit last year. On top of that, you're saying his coverage abilities increased. Well, the 2 years before that, he had 10 passes deflected, 11 passes deflected, and then he jumps down to seven. You
Hmm.
talk about 4 interceptions the year before. Now you have 2 interceptions, although he did bring one back to a touchdown. I'll give you credit for that. But
So
apart from only had
go ahead.
1 sack this season, I mean, the thing that I'm trying to say is he's better with the guys around him, but he's not going to be as good with the guys that are not around him, right?
So when it
So
comes
right now he's not the best. I'll give you he's one of the best, but he's not the best.
so when it comes to coverage, though, we can go even further as far as allow what's it called? As far as kind of more advanced stats. Let's talk about this.
Sure.
from allowed completion percentage, he allowed more completions overall, right? He allowed 46 of 58 completions target against him. That's 79%.
Right.
But at the same time, again, we have to look at the fact that a lot of the Niners, this Niners scheme changed a lot under Nick Sorensen. They
Exactly.
played a lot more zone.
Exactly.
Under Nick Sorensen, like I said, with Fred Warner basically manning an entire three-man thing, he's basically covering a lot more ground. And with that type of issue, with those types of issues, all of his numbers as far as average depth of target, yards per
Right.
target, yards per completion completely went down. He allowed
But
the
Josh,
least
that's
amount
the
of yards
point.
after catch in his career since
Josh, that's the
2020.
point. No, you're missing it. If Ray Lewis didn't have Ed Reed, if Ronnie Lott doesn't have Charles Haley, Ronnie Lott isn't Ronnie Lott, Ray Lewis isn't Ray Lewis. You
So then let me ask you this. Who does
mm,
Fred Warner have? I get he has Nick
nobody,
Bosa, but Nick Bosa,
nobody.
exactly. And Miles Garrett on
That's
the other,
why he can't be the best right now. That's
he
why
has
he's just not the best.
that does no that in fact I would argue that makes him the best, if anything.
No, that makes
Because
his
he makes it
ability,
makes him
that
more
makes the
valuable.
overall what he can. No, 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 hold up. That makes what he does and his overall ability the best. Ray Lewis, when he had nobody, when Ed Reed wasn't there, when nobody was playing,
Hmm.
was on his team, Ray Lewis wasn't at his best. That's just how it works. You're not the best without the guys around you. Fred Warner is at his best with the guys around him. Right now, he's not the best because he doesn't have the guys around him.
So let
As
me
an
ask you this: if you take
individual, he
out
can.
Cam, so if I take out Cam Hayward from the Pittsburgh Steelers,
Right.
we're talking about the previous year's Minka Fitzpatrick, right? Because
Sure.
he was on the Steelers.
Sure.
If I mention the Browns, I mean they lost Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Granted, the Browns
Right.
don't have a player on that type of level, but they have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. If they take
Right.
him out, you're
Right.
to say that that makes Myles Garrett just inherently a better or a worse defensive player, or T.J. Watt in worse?
Numbers wise and effectiveness, yes. Because they're gonna lose, they're gonna be much worse. He doesn't also have the freedom to judge behind him that he can go get the
Hmm.
sacks. He's gonna be worse.
So they're
Numbers wise, he's gonna be
so
worse. And not just that, as an overall player, he will be worse. Because numbers, as much as I hate it, play a huge role.
So
That's
by
how
your
we get the
so
player
then by
nowadays.
your logic, Miles Garrett got worse when Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah got hurt. TJ
Right,
Watt, okay, when Minka Fitzpatrick started playing worse, he got
right,
worse, right?
right.
And Fred Warner, when Nick Bosa was not playing as well as he was, he got hurt for a little bit, and the rest of the team was just injured to hell and back. He was the one who was
Okay.
still
Okay,
being the
I get it. I get it. The way I'm saying it may be confusing you. What I'm trying to say is Fred Warner had nobody. And with that, he's trying to accomplish the impossible. And because of that, he's just not going to be the best. Right now, if he had that same squad that he had last year going into the Super Bowl, I would agree with you. Fred Warner would be the best defensive player. In fact, the year Myles Garrett won, Fred Warner should have won Defensive Player of the Year. Right? I'm with that same assessment. But if you don't have the guys around you, you're not that level. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is one guy. You look at Fred Warner, he lost everybody on his defense. That's the difference. That's what I'm trying to say. But
Well,
it's
time's up
not
when
a
it comes
weird
to the
thing.
first debate. Let us know what you guys think in the comments section as far as Fred Warner or Miles Garrett or TJ Watt. Or hell, for all I care, you guys can say Eli Apple as far as the best defensive
But
player.
no, no, come on.
But hey, let us know in the comments section who you think is the best defensive player in the league, and we'll be more than excited to converse with you guys as far as that. The second debate topic that I have,
Mhm.
Akhilesh, if you have one in mind right now that you want to start off, or we can do yours afterwards.
Sure. You have a 10-minute timer on you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Um, I don't know if you'll find this a hot take because I've heard your opinions on this here and there, but started?
Yeah, well, it starts once I speak, but you have to say the topic first.
Okay. Lawrence Taylor is not the greatest defensive player of all time.
That's a tricky one. Just okay. We'll
I'm just
discuss
being
it.
straight up with it.
I'm cool to play devil's advocate here because I can see the argument. I've made that argument before, but I've also not made that argument. So there's that.
Yeah.
Okay. So why do you think Lawrence Taylor is not the greatest defensive player of all time? Let's start
First
off with
of
that.
all, first of all, greatness is dependent on a couple of factors. Your overall demeanor, your demeanor and all that stuff. Lawrence Taylor has that, right? All those check marks. The point is the statistics don't match up. You have 132 sacks over the course of your career. Fine, sure. Okay. but you don't have the most sacks as a linebacker. Jim Green, if I'm not wrong, that's mistaken, that's his name. He played on the Steelers, the Rams, the Panthers, the Niners. He played everywhere. He has 165 sacks in his career. He's not even mentioned as a top 10 outside linebacker in NFL history. So how are we putting a guy who has 132 sacks above him? Number one. Number two, we talk about overall dominance. I get it. The man won Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie. Let's go over that quickly, shall we?
Sure.
Rookie of the Year, right? One interception. He had one fumble recovery, I guess. 9.5 sacks. Let's put that out there. 9.5 sacks. Now let me pull up this guy. His name is Ronnie Lott. That same year, he won the Super Bowl as well as honestly probably the greatest season as a rookie ever. We can debate that too if you want. 7 interceptions, 3 interceptions returned for a touchdown, 117 yards totally, right? 89 tackles on combo. And this man didn't even win AP Defensive Rookie of the Year. Now, you tell me in today's day, if I give you a guy who has 9.5 sacks with one fumble recovery and one interception, compared to 7 interception, 3 for a touchdown, a Super Bowl win, and an All-Pro Bowl, who's getting the AP Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Well, granted, let me just clarify this for the sake of the argument. Remember, these Defensive Player of the Year awards are regular season based, so the Super Bowl wouldn't matter in the end of the day.
Doesn't matter. This okay, if we're taking that into account,
Yeah,
Lawrence Taylor made, I think, the playoffs in 1981, if I'm not wrong, or barely made it
yeah.
into playoffs, okay? And they didn't even have a top 15 ranked defense, if I'm not wrong, back then
Hmm.
as well. So let's put that into account. The San Francisco 49ers the year before, let's look at this. San Francisco 49ers, 1981, obviously won the Super Bowl. The year before that, they go 6-10, 26th ranked in offense, right? Or
Hmm.
defense. The next year, they're second ranked in defense with a bunch of rookies. Oh, by the way, with the name of D. Ronnie Lott.
Yeah.
This guy comes in 7 interceptions for return for a touchdown. One of them was against the Giants, actually in the playoffs.
Hmm.
Hmm. Ironic against D. Lawrence Taylor. So if we're taking that into account, Ronnie Lott won 4 Super Bowls during the same amount of time Lawrence Taylor played. This man only won two. The
Hmm.
49ers repeatedly beat the Giants in the playoffs. Giants, I think, beat them twice, both on their way to run to the Super Bowl. Let's also go into that. Now, Lawrence Taylor may have had one of the greatest regular seasons that a defensive player's ever had. You talk about that 1986 season. By the way, does not deserve MVP for that season. 22 and a half can get MVP, 20 and a half can get MVP, right? Let's go through that. No interceptions that season, 20 and a half, right? All pro, MVP, all that good stuff. You look at Ronnie Lott that same season, right? Let me pull it up. Sorry, guys, I'm very slow. Ronnie Lott that same season, 1986, 10 interceptions, 134 return yards, 1 interception for a touchdown, right? Along with 3 forced fumbles and 2 sacks, 77 combined tackles for a guy who just moved to safety from corner. How are we putting this guy as an MVP when this man is dominating like nobody's ever dominated before? Switching positions like nobody's ever done before.
Wait, so
People talk,
just to be clear for a sec,
go ahead.
who would you have said was the 86 MVP?
86 MVP. I don't have enough knowledge on the 86 season. If you don't mind, let me look through. I believe,
I still would say Ronnie Lott because there wasn't a quarterback or any offensive
I
player.
mean,
Usually it goes to an
I do
offensive
believe
player.
John Elway had a great season that year, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could,
I still wouldn't have put Elway
but
that year.
Ronnie Lott could honestly, if we're giving it to defensive players, Ronnie Lott should have got it over.
It sounds like
You
the
know what?
whole
Actually, Josh, sorry. Let me mention this. Ronnie Lott doesn't have a defensive player of the year, and
that
I
is
mentioned two
that is
seasons.
criminal.
Let me mention
That I
others.
will agree.
Let's look at this. Let's look at this, right? We're talking about defensive interceptions. The man on a 17 game average per season averaged 5.6 interceptions. Return yards 64.6 a season.
So let me ask you this. Because this sounds a lot like Ronnie Lott is better than Lawrence Taylor argument. Let me ask you this. Do you think Ronnie
Okay,
Lott is the
fair.
greatest
I
defense
guess
player
that's
of
what
all
I'm trying
time?
to say. I guess I'll add that in. Ronnie Lott is the greatest defensive player. I'll add that in too.
Okay. So this is where I'll disagree. I feel like I'm having to argue two arguments now. Well, to get
Okay,
back to
well,
the
let's stick to the
original,
premises. Sure.
sure.
Let's stick to
Let's
the facts and
let's well,
fundamentals.
I'll start with Ronnie Lott, right? Ronnie
Sure.
Lott is still one of the greatest defensive backs of all time. I do think he is the greatest defensive back of all time.
Thank
There's
you.
no doubt about that, right? Other than his 1981 season, though, I don't know a year where he was truly the best defensive player. I would
10
say I would agree
interceptions
with
in a
you.
year?
I would, yeah, 10 interceptions. That was what
In a
year?
year.
That was 1986, correct?
Okay,
Okay,
wait, Yash. Yash, I'm sorry.
sure.
Let me just go back. 1985, right? He doesn't
Hmm.
get a Pro Bowl, an All Pro, nothing for this. Let me just mention the stats. 6 interceptions, 68 return yards, forced fumble, two fumble recoveries, 1.5 sacks, 104 tackles. He doesn't get a Pro Bowl for that season,
Sure. Yeah,
right?
that was criminal. I'm not gonna
Okay.
disagree on that.
The year before that, 4 interceptions. The year before that, 4 interceptions. And then you want to talk about after the 10 interception season 87, 5, 88, 5, 89, 5, 93, 91, 8 with the Raiders with a totally different system in his first year, 8 with
Hmm.
the Jets at what, like 34 years old, 3. How, Josh, this is what I'm trying to say. Okay. Lawrence Taylor had a tremendous impact in the sense that he revolutionized the way the position was played. And if we're talking that as the greatest, Ronnie Lott revolutionized the idea that a cornerback can be a defensive back,
So this
meaning
is
he
what
can
I'll argue.
be a free
So,
safety.
so this is what I'll
So,
argue. So this is what I'll argue from. If we're talking about the 1986 season, right? The
sure.
10 interception season that Ronnie Lott was great. Okay?
Okay.
Lawrence Taylor took a team with first off, there were more injuries on that Giants team, and they were the second best defense in the game. The best defense in
Okay.
that game that year was the 1986 Chicago Bears, who,
Right.
as far as a 2 year stretch, that might be the best defense in NFL history, right?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, and mind you, they were not far off when it came to their statistic prowess compared to the Bears. They had they had allowed just 600 yards less than or 600 yards more than the Bears, right? So this
Right.
was a damn
Fair.
good defense.
Fair.
When you look at the 20.5 sacks, unfortunately, pressures weren't a stat recorded back in the time. But if you go back
Sure.
and look at the tape in Lawrence Taylor, this was a man who every single play, and I don't mean that figuratively, every
Mhm.
single play was touching the quarterback. That sounds kind of weird. But yeah, he was touching the quarterback because he
Fair.
was that quick and that aggressive off the
But
line.
Josh, this is
He
all I'm
got,
asking. This is all I'm asking. Give
sure,
me another guy in the 80s when, let's be honest, passing was not popular,
sure.
getting 10 interceptions in a season
Well, that's the
and not
second
getting
argument I
Defensive
give. If
Player
we're
of the
talking
Year.
about, that's the second argument I give. If we're talking about Ronnie Lott being the best defensive player of all time, the other argument I would give is that he
Mm.
just did not play long enough. Now, you want to sit here and say that Lawrence Taylor is not the greatest defensive player in the league for that same reason, and that's fine, right? If you're talking about Lawrence Taylor and why people look at him as the best defensive player of all time, I would say it's more impact based, right? The guy changed the defense forever as far as making it a more passing oriented offense. You talk about the fact that offenses weren't passing a lot in the 1980s. That was
Okay.
something that Lawrence Taylor changed, right? You talk
No,
about the fact
no.
that this
Josh,
was the
Josh,
first
stop, stop.
outside linebacker. Hold up, hold
It's a
up, hold
very
up, hold up.
creative argument. It's a very creative argument. No, I'm interrupting you. It's a very creative argument
Uh-huh.
because you spun what the world has never said, that Lawrence Taylor made it a passing game. No one's ever said that. Everybody's always
Bill
said Bill.
Belichick.
No.
I didn't say he made it a passing game. I said he built defenses oriented around the pass game more.
Well, no, well, that's different from
That's a
saying
3-4
Lawrence Taylor
defense.
influenced the NFL into becoming a passing-oriented game. That
Uh-huh.
was Bill Walsh. Don't twist that. Bill
No, 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 no,
Belichick
no, no, no,
built a
no. But the
system with
passing defense, the 3-4 defense was
right.
modernized by Lawrence Taylor. That's a
No, it was
pass-oriented defense.
modernized. No, no, no. It was modernized by a system Bill Belichick put together, such
Around
that
who?
Lawrence Taylor could be the
Around
best he
who?
could.
Around who?
Fair against around Lawrence Taylor, but that doesn't mean he did it.
No, but it was his specific skill set as far as being that guy who could play both
Sure.
linebacker
Okay,
and
fine.
edge
Fair.
rusher. Right.
Fair.
So you got that. And then you got on top of that, on top of that, you got a guy who we're talking about his ability to not just be able to be a pass rusher off the edge as a run stuffer, but then also be able to drop back in coverage like he did and play 3-4 linebacker, one of the most versatile players in the league. Just by default, we can't
Okay,
argue
okay, hold on, hold on. You want, if you want to bring versatile,
Ronnie Lott.
all
I know
I'm
you're going
asking
to
is
say that.
this. play a one-on-one island corner and then play free safety up top. Not strong safety, free safety up
As
top.
impressive as this is, by default, you can't be as versatile as a guy who's playing defensive tackle, edge rusher, linebacker, 3-4
Sure.
outside linebacker, inside linebacker.
That
And
wasn't
in the
Lawrence
case
Taylor
of
was not the
Lawrence
first to
Taylor,
do that.
you
Lawrence Taylor was not the first to do that.
no, he was not the first. And then on top of the nickel, but then be as dominant as you did to change the game
Right.
into a 3-4 defense. So from that
That's
stand,
so,
from
so
that angle,
if we're
that's what I'd
taking
argue.
it purely based on effect, and then that's immediately the greatest,
Uh-huh.
I don't agree with that notion. Tom Brady didn't change the game, but
Okay,
he's the greatest
no.
quarterback
He
of all time.
changed the game. He just didn't change it as much as ex quarterback.
No. But if we're talking about effect, right? Tom Brady's effect was simply winning and
Uh-huh.
finding a way to win. That's
Sure.
all. If we're talking about
And then if
revolutionary,
we're talking about dominance, who was more dominant in a 10-year span, Ronnie Lott or Reggie Watt or Ronnie
personally
Lott
to
or
me,
Lawrence Taylor?
based on the numbers, based on Super Bowl wins, if we're talking about winning as a way to term dominance, Ronnie Lott. In 10 years, Ronnie Lott won four. In 10 years, Lawrence won two. And in one of them in 1990, I'll pull up the stats for 1990 if you want.
By that
Uh,
argument, you can make the argument. Would you hold up? That's honestly, if you're talking about the Super Bowls as it is, that's a really
right.
bad argument from the standpoint that Ronnie Lott is playing on a team that has Joe Montana, who's widely regarded as the best quarterback of all time at that point,
Hmm.
and Jerry
Hmm.
Rice, who's regarded as the best receiver of all time,
Let's pull it
right?
up. 1981. 1981. Was
Oh
Joe
no,
Montana Joe Montana
no,
1981?
I'm
No,
not
no, no, no.
disagreeing with
Hold
you.
up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. Hold on. 1981, Ronnie Lott's a rookie.
Yeah,
Joe Montana's not, right?
100%.
But he comes in. They were 28th ranked. They become the best defense in the NFL. They come in, destroy the Tom Landry
Hmm.
Cowboys, right? Win a Super Bowl in 1981. Was that Joe Montana or was that the 49ers defense?
That was a 49ers defense.
49ers defense,
Yeah.
1984, right? The
49ers
49ers
defense.
come in.
Very much. I'm not in disagreement about Ronnie Lott's impact for the 49ers. I get that. I'm a
Okay.
Niners fan. I can't sit here and say that Ronnie Lott didn't help us win 5 Super Bowls. I'm
Are we
thoroughly
done with 10
grateful to him.
minutes? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we are. But
Okay.
I'll just finish off with saying this. At the end of the day, from a season to season standpoint, as great as Ronnie Lott had a few individual seasons, and I'm not taking away from his overall greatness either. Um, I don't think that on a season to season basis, number one, he was as great as Lawrence Taylor was from 81, 82,
Well, what are you
83,
judging as
84,
great
85,
then?
86. On top of that, I would argue, first off, my
No, but
personal
Yas,
opinion,
what are you judging great as? I'm confused. What are you judging great as?
well, if
Are
we're
you
looking
judging purely based on effect and dominance? Is that what you're doing?
effect and dominance, partially. I would also say just the fact that Lawrence Taylor, I mean, you were talking about the Myles Garrett situation earlier, but a guy
Right.
who, 84 had 11 and a half sacks. 85 led the league in approximate value and led the league in edge rusher war, led the league in
Okay.
if we take out quarterbacks, led the league in total war and had 13 sacks. uh
Sure.
1986, of course, that was the 20 and a half season.
Right.
And then we're talking about the last 2 years of his time with the Giants, like his prime, let's say 15
Right.
sacks, 19 approximate value in 1989. Very much
Okay.
for me, if you look at that, that's probably the most underrated season by Lawrence Taylor of all time, just based on the fact that that was probably the year if we had a pressure stat, he'd have the most pressures of any player all time in a season. Um,
Okay.
and then 1990, where he carried that defense to leading their team to beating Ronnie Lott and the Niners
Hmm.
in the NFC Championship when
Mm-hmm.
their quarterback was what was his name? Jeff Hos let me tell
Jeff
you his name.
Hostler.
Yes, Jeff Hostler. So to me, from that angle, Lawrence Taylor has had more seasons as the best defensive player
Hmm.
than Ronnie Lott. From that argument, he's certainly ahead of Ronnie Lott. I would still make the argument though, to let's just to
Peyton
finish
Manning has had numerically, like numbers wise.
uh-huh.
Actually, no, that destroys my argument. I'm gonna keep it shut there.
But I'll
We're
just say
done
this.
with this. 10 minutes is up, so it's. But okay, no.
I'll just
But
say this one last thing. One way or another, I do also agree with you that Lawrence Taylor, I don't think is the best defensive player of all time. I personally think it's Reggie White, and we can argue on that in a different conversation.
I was also gonna bring up Reggie, but for me, see, you know what it is for me? we conveniently leave out the numbers in certain arguments and then conveniently bring
That's
back
true.
the numbers
Yeah.
in certain arguments. Okay. This argument, you need to pull in the numbers, but you also need to pull in the dominance.
Mhm.
If we're talking about dominance, I'll give it to you. Lawrence Taylor is the most dominant player, defensive player. You could
Uh-huh.
even say player. I'm not mad at that. But
Hmm.
what I am mad about is if we're saying the greatest is dominance, Tom Brady fits that category. Fine. MJ fits that category. Fine. But
Sure.
that's not what makes them great. It wasn't dominance that made them great. It's what came with along with that dominance that made them great.
Hmm.
So if we're keeping dominance as the only measuring stick, I have to disagree on greatest.
Sure.
That's my only point there. But we'll move on.
My next debate topic is probably my most controversial one. I've gotten so much hate. Um, we're not a big podcast, but like I get people, my friends who watch the channel. I get so much like slander for them for this take. I didn't get a lot of slander from you too, Akhilesh, from this take. But here we go. I'm
Deservedly
cool
so.
with it. Huh?
Deservedly so.
No, okay. Here
What the world is about to hear, I mean, they might go deaf.
here's what the take is. Calvin Johnson is not a top 10 receiver all time. And we'll start the timer now, whenever you're ready.
Who are your top 10?
Good question. Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Larry
Hold on.
Fitzgerald.
No. I have to write this down. I have to write this down. Okay.
Okay, sure.
Ray Rice, Randy Moss.
Larry Fitzgerald,
Okay.
Terrell Owens,
Okay.
Steve Largent,
Okay.
Don Hudson, Lance Alworth, Marvin Harrison,
Okay.
Julio Jones,
No.
Antonio Brown.
You are you are joking. No
Not at
way.
all.
No way you're putting AB in front of Calvin Johnson. That man's prime lasted 3 years. Calvin Johnson's entire career was a prime.
Antonio Brown's career lasted 3 years.
I would say so.
No, no, no,
Compared
no,
to
no,
Calvin
no.
Johnson,
That's
yeah.
where I very much disagree
Compared to
with
Calvin
you.
Johnson, yeah.
No, Calvin Johnson. Let's look at the stats here. Let's just
Sure.
pull them up while we're talking
Please.
about this. Okay,
Please.
Antonio Brown. Okay, in 2011 had 11,000. What's it called? 1,108 receiving yards. Okay, this was when
Mm,
he was the third option on the receiving team. Now, granted, he
mhm,
didn't have a great succession rate. He didn't have a great catch rate. He only caught about 55% of his passes. But then
mm,
you go further on. 2013. This was a year where he was not even an all pro or first team all pro at that.
mm,
14, he had 1,500 receiving yards, eight
mm,
receiving touchdowns. He
mhm,
had a 65% catch rate.
mhm,
2 years, a year later, leads the league in
mhm,
receptions, leads the league in receiving yards. Again,
mhm,
2015 leads the league in receiving in receptions. He's second in the league in receiving yards. He has
mm,
what's it called? 1,834 receiving yards as second place. Was first team
mm,
All Pro selection, right?
mhm.
Then you go
Yeah.
2 years after that.
Mm,
1,533 yards, leading the league
mhm.
once again in receiving yards, led the league in yards per
Oh
game. This is over a
my God.
5 year stretch, widely regarded as
Wow.
the best 5 year stretch by a receiver in NFL history. Okay?
Incredible.
Over Calvin
Incredible.
Johnson. The
My
following
God.
year has a relative down year. The down year that he
Wow.
had, he led the league in receiving touchdowns.
Wow.
Then, of course, he has the saga of the Raiders, the Patriots, whatnot, right?
Yash, I'm shocked. Who was his quarterback over all those 6 years? Did he have one or
Ben
15?
Roethlisberger,
How many quarterbacks did Calvin Johnson have over his entire career?
three.
Let's go with, yeah, three, four. Let's go with this, right? You talk
Mm-hmm.
about all those stats. Yards per game on average, quickly, if we take a look at it,
Sure.
Calvin Johnson beats him 86.1 to 84.2. Calvin Johnson, by the way, let's just get this out there. 1964 in a single season. In a
Great prime.
single season.
Great prime. One of the greatest primes in NFL
Stop,
history.
stop.
No
No, no,
doubt
no, no,
about
no,
that.
no. Stop saying that, okay? This man, first of all, we're talking about like great primes. Antonio Brown had a single quarterback to fall that upon. Calvin Johnson didn't have a single quarterback to fall that upon. Matthew Stafford came later in his overall career when you talk about his prime and his development as an overall receiver. The other thing, Calvin Johnson is the most injured receiver of all time. When you talk about injured receiver, Calvin Johnson has been injured more than anybody else. The
Sure.
amount of rib cracks, the amount of this, that, and still continuing to play and still be that great of a receiver, incredible,
Sure.
right? Let's just talk about 2012 quickly. 122 receptions, 1964, 122.8 yards a game. Let me repeat that again.
Hmm.
122.8 yards a game. His second season as a quarterback in 2008 Detroit, 1331, 12 tutties, right?
Hmm.
You talk about 96-yard touchdown that season as well.
Hmm.
I mean, these are just numbers that you just don't pull out of randomly. These are credible numbers.
Okay.
1681, 1964, 1492, 1077, despite him playing what, only 13 games and his quarterback being rotated around every game, like some kind of Tom Landry experiment in 1971. 12, 14, 80 receptions in his final season to finish off his career. And then my only point is this. Jerry Rice, I agree. Randy Moss, I agree. Larry Fitzgerald, I agree. T.O., I agree. Steve Largent, I agree. Don Hudson, he should be 10,
We're
right?
talking
He
about
should
skill
be 10.
level, yeah, I could agree with you, but from the
No,
standpoint of what he did as far as body of work, I'd still very much put him in the top 10. He's
no,
the only receiver
he's
who
10
would.
for me. He's 10 for me.
That's
Lance
fair.
Alworth,
That's
I
fair.
put
I
9.
get I
Right?
get where your criteria is coming from. That's
Lance
fair.
Alworth is a 9. He's a fellow Charger, but he's 9, right?
Right.
Marvin Harrison, although I'm going to spoil it out for everybody here. My man did put Marvin Harrison as the most overrated wide receiver of all
All-time
time.
receiver. All time.
He put
Not
that in there. Julio Jones, I disagree with, but Julio Jones is 11 or 12. Okay, I will give you that. Julio
Mhm.
Jones is so close, but man, he didn't. It's not just that he didn't win the Super Bowl, it's the fact that Calvin Johnson's level of dominance, Julio Jones never had. That's just the truth. It's not even
Well,
close. If we're
there are
putting
very
dominance,
few receivers
hold
who've
on.
had Calvin Johnson's level of dominance at his prime. There's no
But
argument
Josh,
about that.
that's the truth. But
No, but
that's what
that
you told
no
me.
no no
That's
no.
what you
But
told me. Lawrence
okay, but
Taylor,
let me
no,
ask you this. Let me
hold
ask
up,
you
no,
this.
no, 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 hold up. Lawrence Taylor is the greatest defensive player ever because when you look at the dominance that he had compared to Ronnie Lott, the numbers of Ronnie Lott are better. You agreed upon this.
Sure.
But the dominance of Lawrence Taylor was just more. If we're keeping that same standard, well, then Julio Jones, he's not there.
Yeah, and
Antonio
Lawrence
Brown,
Taylor
the
also did
truth
it for
is
10.
Antonio Brown is
Yeah, but
not there.
Lawrence Taylor also did it for 10 seasons over multiple seasons. If we're talking about a stretch where Calvin Johnson was truly the best receiver of all, the best receiver in the entire league, that's probably only close to a 3-year stretch. You compare that to
No,
Antonio Brown, that's a
no.
5, 6 year stretch. Same
No,
goes with
first of
Julio
all,
Jones.
this is my point. You say it's a 3-year stretch. I don't know where you're getting that number from. For me, this is the deal. I get it. You had Randy Moss in 2007, 2008, that period of time. I'll give you that.
Hmm.
Other than those 2 years, Calvin Johnson has had his prime. He was the best receiver in the NFL. His prime was from 2009 to 2015.
2009, he had 984 receiving yards in
Yes,
15
yes,
games. Okay,
yes,
that's in no way
yes.
would you consider that's to you the best receiver in the league
For three quarterbacks,
over Terrell Owens. No, 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 no. That was Matthew
over no,
Stafford's
no,
rookie season.
over
He had
three,
no, no, no.
no.
That was
Okay,
Matthew
fine. Fair,
Stafford's
fair,
rookie
fair, fair.
season.
2000, take 2009 out. From 2010 onwards, I wouldn't have anybody else above. 2010,
2010, he had 1,120 yards and 12
12
touchdowns.
touchdowns.
Yeah. Okay. Let's compare that to a guy like, okay, I'm not going to say that he's Garrett Wilson. I'm not trying to say that, but if
Who
I
was
were to
his quarterback then?
no, but
Because
if I
that
were
matters a lot. You're not mentioning it. Who was his
sure, sure, sure,
quarterback?
sure, sure. Absolutely. Let's bring this up. In 2010, he had Sean Hill who played 10 games and Matthew Stafford who played 6 games.
Okay. The year before that, who did he have?
Matthew
This is what
Stafford.
I'm trying to say.
Matthew
Julio
Stafford.
Jones had one quarterback. Antonio Brown had one quarterback. Calvin Johnson was more dominant than those guys when he
In his
had
prime, yeah, no
15.
doubt about that. But again,
But that's
this is
my
my
point.
argument. This is my
That's my
argument.
point.
Let me ask you this, okay? As far as running back primes, okay?
Sure.
Would you say that Priest Holmes or Sean Alexander are up there as far as some of the greatest running back primes? Would you argue it's top 5?
No.
Would you argue it's top 10?
Maybe.
Okay.
Justin.
Justin, fine.
I would say top 15 Grace Point. Sure.
Fine. But we're not going to sit here and argue that they're top 15 running backs, correct? Why? Because their primes were way too short. And
But Yash,
comparatively, I'm not
but
sitting
Yash,
here and
Yash,
trying to
Yash.
say that Calvin Johnson's not a Hall of
If
Fame or
you're
something.
comparing
I'm
Chris
just
Jones,
saying,
Sean Alexander to Calvin Johnson, that's a far stretch.
no,
Please don't
I'm
show
well, that's
me
why
had
I'm
one
saying, admittedly,
celebration.
well, that's
No,
why
no,
I'm
I'm not
saying,
done.
admittedly, Calvin Johnson, he's just outside my top 10, but that's
No,
why
he's
this
not.
hot take makes it that much more fun. He's 11 for me, right?
Yeah, well, that is
Calvin,
okay. What makes Antonio Brown just much better,
he played,
greatness wise?
sure, sure. Let's start off with this. Antonio Brown finished his career with 12,291 receiving yards, right? Let's go back to Calvin Johnson. Um, where'd it go? Shit. Give me one sec.
12,000.
Calvin
This man was
Johnson, Calvin Johnson had
11,619,
11,619
and
receiving
he
yards.
played around 5 seasons less.
But he did play 5 seasons less. Unfortunately, that
But
just
that's
has
what
to be
you're
taken in
missing. That's
consideration.
well, that's what you're missing. Antonio Brown had reliable guys around him. Calvin Johnson never did.
But that's a
He had
coulda, woulda, shoulda.
whoa. Coulda, woulda, shoulda is the difference between 1,000 yards between two guys.
Not at
That's a
all.
coulda, shoulda.
Well, this is not 1,000 yards. This is more
Yeah.
like 1,500, and that's a 2.5 seasons at the very least. If we're
Well,
talking
not
about
for Calvin Johnson. Not clearly not for Calvin Johnson because that man
not
finished
in his
with
prime,
100
sure,
his last season.
not in his prime, but we can't sit here and argue that Calvin Johnson was in his prime the whole time. He was not. I mean, you look at his
He pretty
prime,
much was.
16,800 and
Over half his career is his prime
over half his career because he only played what 9 seasons.
because he's the most injured player in NFL history.
But the best availability is what's it called? The best ability is availability. We both know that, right?
Best availability based on the fact of how you're treated. Antonio Brown had other reliable guys, so people had to guard him. When it came to Calvin Johnson, he was the only guy.
Sure.
There were occasions, the year that he had 1980, the 1964-yard receiving season, right? We talk about, oh, he had 1964. First of all, that man had triple teamed, quadruple teamed.
Sure.
Ray Lewis, Antonio Brown's never been through that. Julio Jones has never been through that.
Jerry Rice has never been through that.
Jerry Rice has never been through that. And still, this man put more dominant numbers than Jerry Rice.
Yeah, 100%.
Then how?
Because again, at the end of the day, prime itself doesn't dictate how high I put a person on the all-time great list. Just by itself, you can have a fantastic prime, but if that prime is not long enough, I cannot sit here and put you
What's
in the
long
top
then?
10.
7 years?
6, 7 years, yeah.
I don't get it. 2010 to 2015, that's 5 years. That's pretty much there. Antonio Brown,
2015, he had
hold on,
no,
hold
no.
on. Antonio Brown, if we're
2015,
talking,
he had
stop.
1,214 receiving
Antonio Brown,
yards.
we're talking about it, right? 2013 to what? 2017 was his prime. That's 4
2013,
years.
more like 2013 and 2018. He led the league in receiving touchdowns in 2018.
Well, 20, sure, fine. Okay, even if you put it there, that's just a season more. And it's still, we're putting him more credit, even though he was a nuisance, a toxic individual.
Sure.
If we're
Well,
not putting
that doesn't dictate. Well, argue that doesn't dictate
Oh,
how
Yash,
good
you're
of a
changing
player.
the rules
No, no,
now.
no. That
Changing
doesn't
the rules
dictate
now.
how good of a player you
The
are on the
rules.
field.
No,
Especially not with
no.
Antonio Brown. We both know that,
You're
right?
changing the rules now.
No.
You're
First
the
off,
one that told me greatness has character involved in it, and now
no,
we're
no,
taking
no,
that
no,
away.
no, no, no. If that's the case, then we
Now
can't.
you're changing the rules,
No, no,
man.
no.
Now
I've never made that rule.
you made
First
that
off.
statement. I can pull it up. You made that statement.
No, when
But
did I make that statement? When did I make that? The only time I've ever made
clearly
that
on a lot
statement
of
about
occasions when we
character,
talk
the only time
T.O.
I've ever made
I'll
that.
just mention T.O. I'll just mention T.O. From there, you can go on. I'll just
I
mention
hey,
T.O.
I think Terrell Owens should have been in the Hall of Fame, and I never said that Terrell Owens is worse than Larry Fitzgerald because of his character. I said Larry Fitzgerald longevity.
I don't know about that, but okay, fine.
You could
If
go
that
through
if that's
the you
case,
could go through the archives. I've never
yeah,
ever said that.
I've heard you say about character, if not on the podcast, at least to me in private. But
No.
okay,
I've made the argument. I've defended other people who argue for against Terrell Owens. I've never said that myself. That's what I've
okay,
said. Yeah.
okay. But regardless of that, the thing for me is this: the prime that he had. Okay, if we're debating that the fact that the prime is too short, I'll say this: the prime that he had for 7 years of Antonio Brown is equivalent to 4 years of Calvin Johnson. That's what I'm trying to put out here. If
Mm-hmm.
we're see, for example, Cooper Kupp that won Triple Crown season, right? Immediately we will elevate him to top 15. No, I'm not saying that. But
Exactly.
what I am trying to say is Calvin Johnson had a stretch of years. The other thing that I have to take into account is this. Calvin Johnson had to rotate to, if we're really talking about it, half his prime through three different quarterbacks. Julio Jones didn't. Antonio Brown never had to. In fact, all of the top 10 receivers that you mentioned never had to. And still, this guy put more dominant numbers than all of those guys
Terrell
combined.
Owens?
No. When he was the most dominant, no. He had Tony Romo. That's
True.
just changing.
Oh,
That's
okay,
just
I
changing
see what you're
teams.
saying. I
I'm
see
saying
what you're
within
saying.
an
Okay, I see
organization.
what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
I'm saying within an organization.
Well, no, Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald. 100% Larry Fitzgerald.
But even then,
What do you mean?
but okay, fine. Larry Fitzgerald is a fair argument. That's fair. But he's in the top 10, just like Calvin Johnson should be.
Okay.
Okay.
And
And in
if
that
we're
same case, if we're talking about overall dominance, no receiver on your list has had close to the level of dominance in a prime that Calvin Johnson did. No receiver had to ever go through as much to be as good in their prime as Calvin Johnson did. And he did it. That's the point.
But
So
he
if we're
did it in a
blaming-
short amount of time, which
no,
again, when we're talking about
you're
all-time
blaming
players, it's
no,
a
but you're
body of
putting
work.
no,
It's a
it's not
body of
about a
work.
body of work.
It
It's not
very
about a
much
body
is.
of work.
We're not going to
The
talk
prob-
about a receiver based on just his talent. Otherwise, you might as well
But
come up with,
also effectiveness. Are you kidding me? 4.35 is a 40-yard time. We act like that's nothing.
it is something. I'm not arguing that. It's impressive, but you got to translate it over a 6-7 year period of pure dominance if you want to be considered one of these top 10
Josh,
all-time receivers.
Well, what I don't understand is 1964, 122 yards a game is not considered dominance. I don't know what is.
That's one
Antonio Brown was
season.
never close to that.
That's one season.
Julio Jones was never close to that.
But that's one season.
Over a course of time, though, look at the previous season, 1681.
Okay,
The year
okay.
after that, 1492.
Okay,
And
but
this wait, hold up.
by that
This was
argument-
when he didn't- hold up. This was time when he didn't even play full seasons. This was when he was injured.
By that
and he still came through it.
by that
He played
argument-
with broken ribs.
By that argument, Patrick Mahomes should be the greatest quarterback of all time. By your argument, just by your argument.
No, he shouldn't.
Based on the fact that he has not one, but two of the top 3 greatest yard seasons of all time. Most dominant as that, on top of winning a Super Bowl in one of those seasons.
And then so he has what, one of the greatest offensive coaches of all time. He has one of the greatest tight ends of all time. Who does Calvin Johnson have?
He still has Matthew Stafford, who you have argued is a Hall of Famer.
So now we glorify Matthew Stafford. Like
I've
he's
never
something
glorified
worthwhile.
Matthew Stafford. I still sit here and all I say is that with Calvin Johnson,
No,
if
but
he had
this is what I'm
played
trying to say.
longer,
If
he would
Calvin
be a top
Johnson-
10 receiver. But he
Whoa, whoa,
retired
whoa, whoa,
too
whoa.
early.
No, he retired too early of what? He had broken hips, broken ribs. What else could he have done?
That's the unfortunate reality, though.
See, but Yash, this is my point. You know what? The other way we'll twist it? Man, he played for a long time, but he just didn't do enough for his team. Okay, if we're talking about longevity, Barry Sanders isn't in the top 10 running back of all time?
He is.
But
But
he didn't
you've
play
seen
long
what
enough.
he did in those
He
in,
didn't play
in those
long
10
enough,
years.
though. He didn't play long enough.
Yeah, but you've seen what
If
his
we're
whole
talking about his prime, if we're
you
talking
talk
about
about
his prime,
yeah, but you talk about a prime that lasted his entire career. That was Barry Sanders. He was a first-team
Oh,
All-Pro as a rookie. He was 13. He led the league in rushing yards in his second season, his sixth season, his the 2 of his final 3 seasons. He retired with 14,900 rushing yards.
this man
and a
retired with
second-team All-Pro selection.
12-14.
That's his whole
This man
prime.
retired with 12-14 and 9 touchdowns, and he led the Lions to the playoffs.
In his
The
final
year-
season?
Yeah,
Not in his final season, no.
I
2015
bet
they went
against the Bears he win
2015
it.
they went 5. Yeah, 2015 they went 7-9.
My bad. The year at least before that, I think they went to the playoffs, if I'm not wrong.
And
My bad.
Calvin Johnson was hurt in a few of those games, which again, like I said, the best ability
And he
is
still came
availability.
back- You're not blaming that on Calvin Johnson. You're acting like it's Calvin Johnson.
I'm not blaming it on Calvin Johnson, but unfortunately that's not going to that when it comes to all-time great
That's
conversation,
just a stupid
you
metric, bro.
can there can be an argument for. It can be an argument against, but it can be an argument for.
But so you can't use that as an argument.
Yeah. But Antonio Brown and Julio Jones have that argument that they were playing more and they performed in those times.
And they weren't even close to the performance level of Calvin Johnson. This is
But
my
they performed longer. They were
Oh, come on, Josh. That's just a stupid argument. And you know it too. You're smiling
Not at
too.
all.
You know it's a stupid
not at all.
argument.
I would argue, okay, that if we're talking about
So if a
all-time
guy
greats,
played no, hold up, Josh. So if a guy played 15 season and averaged, let's say, 1,500, and a guy plays 8 seasons, and he averages around 1,300. Who's a better receiver?
The guy who played, wait, say it again?
If a guy played 10 seasons,
Okay.
right, and he averaged, let's say, close to around 1,500, and a guy plays 7 seasons and averages 1,300, who's a better receiver?
The guy who played 10 seasons and averaged 1,500. That's why
Yeah,
I have Larry Fitzgerald in my top
well,
three.
then I guess Larry Fitzgerald is a different beast. Okay, that's 17 years of just prolonging of zero championships and just wanting to play. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a different story entirely. And the other thing we have to take into account when it comes to Larry Fitzgerald is there's never been a point in his career where he was the best receiver in the NFL. That's number one. Number two, there's also never been a point in his career where he was tripled or quadrupled. In fact, there's never been a point
2008, I
in
would say the
anybody's
postseason.
career.
I think if you're talking about postseason receivers, you can argue that. 2008 for
I'm
sure.
sorry. Well, I'm sorry. Calvin Johnson never was gifted Kurt Warner or
Yeah,
anybody to
that
the
is
Hall
true.
of Fame.
That I'll give you that much.
So,
Yeah.
if we're going on that argument,
Yeah.
let's just
Yeah.
stop there, right? The other argument that I would say in Larry Fitzgerald cases, he was never even double teamed. Larry Fitzgerald was rarely double teamed. If we're really looking as a
Mhm.
big threat type of player, Larry Fitzgerald was never heralded as a big threat type of player. The only reason why we put him in the top 10, and for me, he's not even top five. For me, Larry Fitzgerald falls in 7 or 8. That's for me personally.
That's okay. That's
Okay?
where I disagree. But yeah.
That's for me personally. Okay. But I think from my standpoint of what you view as greatness, you view longevity as too much of a factor, whereas I view purely as dominance, what you had, what you did with it, and to what level
Definitely.
you did it. In that case,
That's
for me,
definitely a difference in our criteria without a doubt.
yeah.
And you
Yeah,
know,
I personally, with all due respect, I think it's a flaw in the criteria to have longevity as the main criteria when it comes to comparing Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, and Calvin Johnson. The thing that I think for me is kind of interesting about this debate is I know we're above 10 minutes, so I'm just talking,
mhm.
just grace point as that none of these guys won a Super Bowl. And I mean Antonio Brown won a Super Bowl, but let's be honest,
Yeah,
we care.
he wasn't a key member of that team.
He did get the touchdown, first touchdown
Yeah.
for Tom Brady. We'll give him credit for that, but he really wasn't like the Antonio Brown that we're gonna herald, right? When it comes to a
Oh,
Super
right,
Bowl.
true, bro. I forgot that he won the Super Bowl in 2020. I completely forgot about that. I was
Right.
thinking the
Yeah.
2010 Super Bowl.
Right, exactly. But I was he there in the
Yeah,
2010?
he was. Yeah, he didn't play a key member. I think he was like a return specialist. But
Yeah,
yeah,
so
2020 he was a key member.
really two Super Bowls that he has, really he didn't play much of a factor in. So when we take all that into account, right? And for me, character does play a role, right? In some situations. In some situations, I know it's not going to be the biggest factor. Like Terrell Owens, he's a top 3 receiver of all time, right? For
Hmm.
my list, Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, right? The other name that I'm surprised, Yash, honestly, Chris Carter, the Minnesota Vikings. If we're really talking about
I considered him. That's the one place where I'd argue your argument about prime defeats longevity. That's where I'd say Calvin Johnson's better than Chris Carter. Carter for me is 13.
yeah, that's a bit of a stretch for me. See, for me, the way I would have gone it, I'll be completely honest with you guys. For me, Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, um, third for me would have to go T.O., right? That's what I would put T.O. as. Let me just look at the other names that you mentioned. T.O. For me, Marvin Harrison is 4, Steve Largent is
That's
5,
that's what I would love to debate you in a different on a different day. Um,
Larry Fitz at 6. Um, I would personally put Calvin Johnson at 7, right?
wait, so who's your five?
So for Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, T.O.,
Harrison.
no, I put uh
You said Harrison was four, right?
Marvin Harrison was 4, 5. I don't know why I said 5 now. 5. I said Steve Largent. 6.
Oh, okay.
Larry. 7. I would go with Calvin Johnson. That's where I would put Calvin Johnson at. Julio Jones is 8. I do agree with you that Julio Jones is there. For me, Chris Carter at 9, and then I would go Lance. I would go Don Hudson at 10. For me, 11 Antonio Brown, 12 Lance Allworth. That's my list.
I
That's
feel like you're downplaying your own guy, man. Lance Alworth to me has to
He's
be
a
like
revolutionary guy. If we're talking about that one draft that we did, By the way, I did win that. But if we're talking about that one draft that we did in terms of the most influential players of all time, yeah, Lance Allworth is probably the most influential receiver of all time. I would even put him above Don Hudson because Don Hudson created the idea of the fact that there was a pass catcher, but Lance Allworth took the idea of route running, feet work, footwork, pace, overall agility, all of those factors that we credit receivers now.
Mm-hmm.
He was the one who kind of brought it to life. So I'll
Sure.
give you that. But I just think as an overall prime, as an overall, I mean, we're talking about dominance. He wasn't there with the rest of these guys, but he was so revolutionary. He has to be there in the top 15. That's why I put him at 12. Um, that's just my that's just my take on it. But for me, the reason why I put Calvin Johnson so high is he had a dominance like no other players ever had. And he was dealt with so many problems when he had that dominance. So for me, it's just with what you're given, you do so much and you're able to sustain it also for a period of time, even though you're literally quadruple team, you have broken ribs and you still execute what 1,200 yards in your final season. I just don't think that longevity should be, something that can be given to a guy like him because he had to go through so much. He didn't have a choice. And if we say that he shouldn't have tried as hard, well then he would have just been a washed guy, right? At the end of
That's
the day.
very true. Yeah.
So I
100%.
don't think that that idea of longevity, it's a good argument, but not in this case. So that's my point when it comes to the whole Calvin Johnson thing. Yash, I do want to fact check though what you said about the character thing. Because I don't mean it as a personal thing, but I do remember you saying it somewhere, so I pointed at that out. Don't want to be taken disrespectful or anything like that,
No, no,
but
no, no. But
I do.
I definitely do not remember saying this whatsoever.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay,
So
fair argument, but I remember it somewhere, so just pointed that
what
out.
I do remember, yeah, this is the one time I do mention saying character. I think it was when we were having a conversation of Hall of Famer or not, right?
Okay,
I remember saying Earl Thomas probably going to be left out of the Hall of Fame just because of the character issues. But that's
yeah,
not, that's not even like for me, that's not even
but
my own
but
opinion.
and you
That's
know
just,
what,
yeah.
man, the Earl Thomas like,
That situation is just,
but that's what I'm trying
yeah.
to say with Antonio Brown.
No, I'm not saying that
If
like
you
he's
add
pro
up all those things together, it's equivalent.
let's be honest. Let's be honest here. There is a good chance that Antonio Brown probably gets left off the Hall of Fame just because of his antics off the field, right? Like we
And
could be
deservedly
realistic
so.
about that.
Deservedly so.
Actually, that's what I disagree with you. I don't think so. I think that the Hall of Fame should be based on skill level.
See,
Maybe
man,
now
if we do
maybe
that,
there's a way of basically, maybe
see,
there's a
I,
way of
I agree with that notion. Okay,
Mhm.
I don't think that character should be the determinant factor for whether one gets in or doesn't get in.
Sure,
It should be purely based on what he did on the field, how he executed, how the game that we love, how did he play it.
sure.
I get that, but character should play a role, right? The fact that T.O. had to wait that many years to get into Hall of Fame, I disagree with. You shouldn't have gotten the Hall of Fame at least one
The
year later.
Terrell Owens one though was ridiculous in the sense Terrell Owens never had problems off the field. Antonio Brown
Exactly.
has had problems off the field and a lot of bad
Hence my
ones too.
point. Hence my point.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying like in that argument and
See,
I'll
this is what I'll try to say. Okay, if
uh-huh.
Antonio Brown, whenever he gets eligible to get into the Hall of Fame, he has to wait at least 8 years. That's really what I feel. That's really what I feel. Because if we're not putting people like what's his name, Rams, Grayson, you have put
Torrey
him.
Holt.
Yeah.
Torrey Holt's
What did he
by the
do
way,
off the field?
Torrey Holt, I would say is the my 12th greatest receiver of all time. That might be a hot take, but yeah.
I would put him at 13,
Who do you
right?
have as 12? You have 12 Lance Alworth, correct?
Right. I would put him
Yeah.
at 13,
Uh,
right? So that's where my standpoint of him is at, right?
yeah.
So I rate him that highly, but I mean, what did he do wrong?
It's a
He
disgrace
did
that he's not in the Hall of Fame,
he
man.
did nothing wrong, and he's yet still not in. So if we have a guy who did a lot of stuff and his character was bad, he should wait a long time.
hmm Well, this is what I'll argue, and at least I'll be this. I'm a baseball fan, so I get to see the inconsistencies of the Baseball Hall of Fame, and
Yeah.
it makes me want to say some words that we try to not say on this podcast.
On
Um,
that end, Yash, I am in complete agreement with you. I don't know much about baseball,
yeah,
but on that end, for example, I'm not afraid to say it. Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame.
I'm not. I don't have. I honestly don't have an opinion on that. I've been going
And
back and
guys, you
forth,
can
but
roast me on it because I don't really know much. I just know his
right.
numbers were insane.
His numbers were also insane, especially during the time he took steroids from 1999 to 2004. That's
Okay.
usually really the big argument. Um, but all I'll say is the MLB is so goddamn inconsistent when it comes to steroid use or any other, illegal thing. Now they're basically talking about Pete Rose might be in the Hall of Fame, which I don't have a problem with. Pete Rose, um, as far as a player, as far as what he did as a player, he should be in the Hall of Fame without a doubt. And the my problem is the inconsistencies around that. But now you're also talking about the 8 men out from the 1919 Black Sox scandal, right? Guys who, for the most part, did do things wrong, right? The,
Hmm.
the main controversies are surrounding Buck Weaver and Shoeless Joe Jackson. Buck
Right.
Weaver hit 400, if I'm not mistaken, in the World Series. So there's a good argument to be made that he never even came close to throwing that World Series. Shoeless Joe Jackson also hit something like 400 in that World Series. So it's hard to make that
Sure.
argument that he threw it.
See,
But
like I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing. It's
right,
about. That's what I'm trying
well,
to say to
throwing
you. It's, I
baseball
have no idea
basically
what
means you
baseball
fixed
is.
it. You basically purposely lost the game for money.
Right. I
Right,
mean, the only thing that I remember is that something in the 1940s that happened with
right.
the I think it was called some what's it called, like a 1940 something Boston Massacre or something like that.
I faintly remember. I don't know too much about that, to be honest with you. But
The
there's
no
one
no
that
some kind of thing that was on Boston Red Sox for a long time. They called it some curse.
oh, the Curse of the Bambino. That has nothing
Maybe
to do with that. The
oh, it
White
has
Sox
nothing
had their
to do.
own scandal. It's called the Black Sox scandal, but that was because of that. Um, but yeah, the 19 like that 19 now that you're seeing like the MLB basically now that they've basically taken all of those guys off of the suspended from the Hall of Fame list, you're seeing a guy like Ed Seco who's on the 8 men out who clearly gambled and admitted to it, right? Him basically sitting there and being having a chance on being in the Hall of Fame. And he could go in the Hall of Fame. If you look at his
Yeah,
numbers, he has Hall of Fame numbers. So it's the fact that the MLB is so goddamn inconsistent about that type of stuff that
that you're
irks
pissed
me.
off.
At least in the case of the NFL, they've been a lot more consistent when it comes to this stuff.
Sure.
Um, for the kids who watch our channel, I would not recommend this because it's a kind of disturbing story. Wait till you get older. But when it comes to there's one specific story about one NFL player, offensive line for the Chiefs in the 60s and the early 70s, Jim Trier. If you guys don't know who this is, look him up. He was an 8-time All-Pro with the Chiefs, one of the best offensive line of all time. I would argue a top 10 offensive line, maybe. He was that good. Um, but he had a really, really, really disturbing end to his career or end to his life. Um, a situation that um, it's something that you never wish to see from any person, let alone NFL player. Um, a lot of people speculate that it could have been because of CTE, but we don't know that for sure. And for that reason, to this day, he still has yet to be in the Hall of Fame. Um, and it's a situation that I think the NFL has been consistent on as far as keeping those types of players out of, or keeping those players out of the Hall of Fame. So from that argument, I would argue people should still know who Jim Trier is. He's become forgotten, even though as great of a player as he was, and even for the story itself of what actually happened. People
Mhm.
should know the story. People should know who he is. We shouldn't just forget a player. And I think this we can speak on this as just even a societal issue. There are a lot of people who've done bad things. You can't just like cancel a person just based on what they've done when they've done other historic stuff. You got to talk about the good and the bad, right? And I think that speaks even for the Hall of Fame case. Maybe you can credit what they did as a football player while still separating that from what they were as the person. There are a lot of football players who are terrible human beings, but we can still at least acknowledge what they do on the football field. Maybe
Right.
not praise them and worship them like they're gods and heroes, but still, at least give credit to that or at least talk
Yeah,
about it.
give credit where credit's due. Yeah, I get that. I'm with you on that. But the only thing I would say to that is that's where you can allow yourself to get to this little bit of a little bit of a diversion, if you will,
Yeah,
right? If
very
you allow
much.
that to happen, then you're like, well, okay, I can use that even for the Antonio Brown thing that I was saying,
Hmm.
right? We got to put matter where it matters due. Well, in that case, right? When you talk about his playing, you can't mention character
But you
there.
can't mention his greatness. That's the argument we were making.
Well, when you talk about his greatness, you can mention character. When you talk about his playing, you can't.
Well, doesn't his greatness as far as a football player only talk about what he did as a football player?
Well, no, not necessarily. See, when you
How?
talk about Michael Jordan, right? And you talk about LeBron James is far by the better player, right? When you talk about 5 on 5, LeBron James will be the
He's
better
also
player.
far and by the better person, I would argue. But we don't
Yeah,
look at LeBron James
right,
as a greater
right.
player
But at
because
the
of his
same time, we talk
person.
about greatness. Why do we put Michael Jordan above him? Well, because of his demeanor, right? Well, because of the stance that he had. Well, because of the dominance, not by playing, but just his mere sheer effect. Like that's persona.
Effect as a player, not as a role model for the NBA.
Well, I mean, he kind of was.
He
You got to
was,
realize,
but well, probably shouldn't have been based on sort of things he was
right?
doing. But
Right,
yeah,
exactly.
but
But
that's where honestly you made a great point where you're talking about the kind of
the
the
character plays a role, but it
yeah.
shouldn't be the role.
But that's the
I guess.
thing that's kind of like the gray area where it's like this thing of like it shouldn't be considered when we're talking about just players as a whole, but it does
Yeah,
get considered, and that's the unfortunate part I hate about sports, where things
yeah,
become like it should just like sports are supposed to be things that we can get away from the sadness of life and all that
yeah.
other stuff,
I
but
mean,
it
for
gets into
example,
life.
I mean, even outside of just playing on the field, like we saw recently with, I'm not going to say his name, but some guys on ESPN that was, I mean, everybody knows when I say it now, but like really, when you talk about ESPN First Takes history, the greatest,
I'll say it for you. I'm not afraid to say it. Cancel me if you want to. Don't cancel Akilash. I feel like I keep saying this on this channel. It's Shannon Sharp. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you really think about the when he and Stephen A. Dan Orlovsky and that crew was there. That's the greatest ride of First Take that was ever there. I
Uh-huh.
mean, the environment, the I mean, talk about Lakers in five. I mean, that was him on ESPN, and
Yeah.
that's goes on still today, and we still laugh at it.
Yeah.
Right? But because of some event that we don't even know, at least I don't even know if he did it, he didn't do it, if he wanted to do it, if he didn't want to do it, who knows? He got fired.
Yeah.
And we will never experience that again. Same thing happened with Michael Irvin, same thing happened with Unk, right? So it's just character plays a huge role,
Yeah.
but it's not what's going to define a guy to get into the Hall of Fame. It's at least it shouldn't be the only thing that defines a guy, but it
Hmm.
should be part of the equation, is what I feel.
Yeah.
That was a long-winded thing on a really different question, but Yash, you're wrong. Calvin Johnson should be a top 10. We'll leave it there.
Hey, let us know what you guys think in the comment section as far as this debate. And we'll get back to you on that. We'll talk about another next debate topic later on, but yeah. So we're going to be talking today about the top four favorite teams that Akilesh and I have. As huge
Yeah.
football fans, we obviously have our top four favorite teams, and I think a lot of it comes from a little bit of bias based, Akilesh is a major Chargers fan. I'm a huge 49ers fan. Um, but certainly there are certain teams that as we've learned more and more about the sport of football, I think these teams kind of stick in our memory as far as teams that we want to talk about. And today we're going to be doing essentially a winner takes all bracket style play as far as discussing our top four teams and even discussing why we like them so much. So we're going to start off. It's going to be our top four. We're going to go from number four all the way to one. Akilesh, do you have a preference on who to start? Me or you?
No, no, I'm all ears. You go ahead.
All right. So at number four, I'm gonna go with the Las Vegas Raiders from 2021.
Ooh,
And
very interesting. Okay.
the reason why, and Akilesh can testify to how much this team kind of inspired me throughout that year. right? We talked a lot about the different crazy stuff that happened with this Raiders team over the year, whether that was the John Gruden situation, whether that was the Henry Ruggs situation, the
Yeah,
Damon Arnett
it's true.
situation. I mean, this team went through turbulence like I've never seen it. And
Yeah,
there's one thing I've learned from football, right? Football is such a broad sport as far as the amount of fans that you are. You get to meet people who are 90 years old who talk about football from the 1950s, and
right,
kids who talk about football the same way, who are younger than us, who talk about it, they're 12, 13 years old. And every generation's had their team that has gone through just incredible turbulence.
right.
For Generation X, I think that was the 1993 Houston Oilers, right? For the
Yeah,
millennial generation, I mean, if you're talking about, earlier on, you can make an argument that that might have been, I don't know, the 2006 Raiders. Or for younger members of the generation, I'm old enough to remember this team is my 2014 49ers, whether that was the Civil War with Jim Harbaugh or the, you know, other
yeah, that's true.
allegations with Colin Kaepernick and Alden Smith and all. But for this generation, right, for Generation Z, as we come into age, the team that stands out for all of us is that 2021 Raiders team. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a 15-year-old kid. This was, this was my first year in high school, really, because COVID had taken out my ninth grade year,
Mm-hmm.
and um, a team that had gone through so many struggles, whether that was Derek Carr's injuries or so many other things. You go through the offseason and see so many different executives just suddenly resign, and going to this season, the Raiders had more hope than in years past. They had gone through the 2-8-8 years that
Right.
most John Gruden teams are accustomed to. They had gone through the 2020 season, which they almost made the playoffs, but just lost out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and now that they were finding their own, it looked like they were going to, you know, take the next step and become a true playoff contender. And
Yeah.
then everything just fell apart in record time. I mean, uh, they started off the season with a shocking upset win against the Baltimore Ravens, who, albeit they were injured to hell and back, but still,
Sure, but
I
still,
mean, it
even
was an
then.
amazing game. Happened to be on my birthday too, so I got to watch the game while I was eating a birthday cake, which was nice. But you go from that to then 4 or 5 weeks later, John Gruden having the email scandal. And as someone who had not been so much on social media growing up, it really was a wake up call to me as I start getting older, as far as there are certain things you cannot say. And Gruden crossed the line on all of them, right? He, I mean, he said everything offensive you could possibly say in emails. So that was the first wake up call. And then you see the Henry Ruggs situation, right? 15 years old, we're almost 15 and a half. That's the age where most of my friends start learning how to drive and all of that.
Sure.
And you see Henry Ruggs and what happened to him. And you learn a lot about the Henry Ruggs you learn a lot about don't drink while driving when you're older, but seeing something like that and seeing within the first day you hear, "Oh my God, he killed someone." But I'd never seen anything happen to those players. So you don't think accountability is going to happen. By the end of the night, Henry Ruggs is cut. He's off the team and he's arrested. So, like that, suddenly a player's life has changed and you see it in front of your eyes. Then within the week, you see Damon Arnett get cut for flashing a gun on Instagram, right? These are the things that changed my perspective as a person on life, let alone then seeing the adversity that the team went through and seeing how they rallied behind Rich Bisaccia, who's in my opinion, one of the best leaders in a tough time for a team I've ever seen. How he
Right.
made that team rally. They were down and back 6-7, basically pretty much out of the playoff hunt in a wildly competitive AFC, which included your Chargers team. And they won the last 4 games, including a dramatic final game against the Chargers. And
Yeah.
then even in the Bengals game, they played a Bengals team who went on to play in the Super Bowl and was 3 points away from winning it. And they almost beat them. They were one play away from tying the game. 19-26. Derek Carr threw the ball to the end zone and it was intercepted. I forget by who. I think it was Von Bell.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it
that
was.
whole idea of just coming out so close. Maybe you didn't win, but that adversity to triumph through something as, changing, as altering as what that Raiders team went through. It was incredibly inspiring. And for me, it educated me a lot, not just on football, but just life in general. So they, for me, have to be a top four team. So yeah.
I mean, look, I think when you started off this topic, when Yash told me, he told me, your top four teams. I think, I was about to initially go off on him because it was like, we're trying to do a bracket thing here, trying to
Hmm.
compare teams, and you go with, a under 50 team, right? But I think the point that you mentioned of trials and tribulations, especially during a COVID time, you just passed COVID and then you get hit with this. I mean, it's definitely something that I think spoke to a lot of people. I mean, I think me and Yash talked about that team for a very long time. I was not very happy talking about it because, the way that season ended for me was very tough.
Right.
But at the end of the day, you have to give respect where it's due. I mean, for a guy as a coach to write letters to every single one of his players, knowing that he is not 100% going to be your coach the following year, it means so much. I mean, you look at the Green Bay Packers special teams unit over the past couple of years. You talk about one of the best special teams units in the league, and that's because of Rich Bisaccia as the special teams coach there. So it's just a testament to the type of coach he is. Now, for me, kind of like Josh, this is a really emotional one for me, in the sense that this is why I became a football fan. Um, I'll be very honest. I hated the sport. No, and I don't mean hate lightly. I mean hate it. I remember, telling my dad, "Why are pigs flying around in a mud field?" Because I really thought that's what football was. I thought it was just a waste of time. But the 2016 Patriots for me changed that completely. Because number one, 2014 they won the Super Bowl, right? But that year for me made for the first time for me, I saw somebody through me for in some sense, and it was the way the defense played, the way that defense attacked every single time the ball, the way they went after the ball, the way they relentlessly just kept pushing. And they didn't have any big names. There were not, mind-boggling names in that team that was going to transform forever. When you look at that defense, you didn't have one player there that was like, oh my God, he's going to change me forever. You got to remember, Chandler Jones left before after the 2014 Super Bowl win season. Darrelle Revis wasn't there. No big name players were on that team when you talk about a defensive standpoint. But they kept attacking, attacking, attacking. They were relentless when it came to finishing off and just destroying everybody. And then you look at trials and tribulations. For Tom Brady to be wrongfully terminated and being suspended for 4 games, and I will stand by saying wrongfully, because you can call it the whatever the ball air scandal or whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, it got proven untrue, and it is still stands to be untrue. For him to miss the first 4 games, you have a quarterback, he goes down. And then you have another quarterback, he gets injured as well, but still continues to play. They go 3-1 to start off the season. And then you bring in Tom Brady, you go 14-1 to finish off that season. You destroy the Texans, you destroy the Steelers. You think it's a done game. Then you go into the Falcons, you're down 28-3. 3 minutes to go in the third quarter. I mean, everybody knows the story. People who didn't know football know the story. I still remember, Yash. For those who have lived in the Bay Area, you guys know this place, Chad Bowen, Dublin. Still remember, one of my dad's close family friends had come over. We took her to a place in Chad Bowen, had dinner, and I was just saying, man, the Super Bowl is going on today. I might check it. It's 28-3. The Patriots
Hmm.
are losing. I'm going, man, it's a done game, right? It's not like basketball where you shoot, 7 3-pointers and you're back in the game.
Right.
It's more like you're done. It's over.
Hmm.
I remember we had a long dinner. We went back. We went to get some ice cream. Had a good time. We went to I think the Milk Dairy to get some ice cream. Came back. I walk out of my door, and there are people screaming, yelling. Beer bottles are being thrown at our car. The pots are being thrown on the floor. Soil is jumping everywhere. Trees are shaking. People are shouting. A TV is broken in one house. Glass door window is broken in the other house. I'm going, what's going on? It's in my neighborhood. I look around. The opposite side is a Patriots fan. The other side is a Falcons fan. I see the two families just completely going nuts. A Patriots fan is literally there's a guy is taking off his shirt. He's running around everywhere. He's pouring water over his own head. He's going crazy. But I saw football for the first time on that experience. And I watched the highlights. I still watch it today. Watching the Falcons go down against the Patriots, for the first time in my life, I saw when you don't give up, you always get what you deserve. That's the first time I've ever seen that in my life to that extent. To come down from that much, to throw a pick six, to do everything, for Tom Brady to come in there without Gronk and without really any good receivers. We're not gonna sit here and say Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola, and Chris Hogan is a stellar cast of receivers to go
Correct.
around. But with that, to win a Super Bowl with a rookie Sony Michel, I mean, come on, you can't write a better story than that. That for me, that 2016 season for me, from an emotional standpoint, it has to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak on this experience. I mean, Akilesh, that was the year he moved to California, or it was
No,
it from California? He moved to Pleasanton, correct?
yeah,
Yeah, he moved to Pleasanton. So this was the first year I knew him, and I don't remember what year or what month you moved. You moved in 2016. Was it February, correct?
I moved in February. Yeah,
February, yeah.
I
So
just moved into my house at that point.
right,
I didn't know
and
anybody, and I saw glass windows broken, a TV monitor outside in the garden,
right.
beer bottles everywhere, glass everywhere, people shouting and yelling.
Right.
Initially, when I saw that, I was scared, but
Hey, that's California for you when it comes to football.
yeah,
Um, for anybody in Texas, because I know I have a lot of friends in Texas. I know I have a lot of friends in Louisiana who say that California doesn't like football. Come to the Bay Area, man. You will see. We love football over here. All right. We just don't always talk about it, but
yeah,
believe me, we love it over here. But what I'll say is I remember you talking about it, and you were still relatively new, so I knew you didn't know much about football at that point, but you were like, whoa, what was this game, right?
yeah.
Um, and you were kind of stunned. I remember like everybody I knew, my mother doesn't really talk that much about football, and she
Hmm.
was, astonished by the game, right? She knew Tom Brady because of that game, right?
Yeah,
People I never knew even knew what football was were coming up to me and asking me, and everyone knew me at that time as the football fanatic. I was so
right.
obsessive about football at that point. I used to simulate my own games, so to speak, as far as what teams used to do and all that. But yeah, I mean, the amount of impact that game had and the amount of impact that that team had, seeing the story that they went through, there are documentaries upon documentaries of that on YouTube. um yeah, I very much understand where Akilesh is coming from as far as impactful, and they are certainly up there as far as one of my favorite teams. Um, Although I don't necessarily say that I have that much of a connection to them, but yeah, I very
Fair.
much understand.
Other thing for me is I'll just jump in real quick. The first state I ever lived in the United States was Boston,
Right.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, I was
So
about to
for
say
me,
that.
I have that Patriots connection. My uncle's a Patriots fan, or at least was. He's recently stopped watching football, as far as I know. But he was a Patriots fan, so I kind of
Hmm.
got that Patriots, thing.
Right.
I didn't know about them till that 2016 season. I was like, I might as well watch a bunch of pigs fly everywhere. And then I saw
Right.
Brady, saw what he did. I saw that defense move. That was the first time I'm like, I really resonate with something. So
Hmm.
it was that year also that LeBron came back against the Warriors, down 3-1.
Why,
Look,
why
look.
did you
No,
have
no,
to
no, no.
mention that?
I know you don't like it,
Oh,
Yash, but truly for me, that season was the only time I've seen you push back hard enough and you'll find an answer. That was the first time I've ever seen that in my life.
that doesn't just apply though with basketball and football. I'll talk about baseball. That was the year that the Cubs won their first World Series
Right?
in
Yeah.
108 years,
I
and they
mean, you
came
talk
back
about
from
the
three
Bambino.
one down
Yeah.
in that World Series.
Talk about
So that was
Bambino,
just
right? Yeah.
I mean, that was just an incredible year of sports in general. But
You say that,
um,
yeah. I mean, you talk about greatest years in sports. You could put
it's
that as
very
number.
much up there. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the greatest year of sports I would say in our lifetime. I
Yeah.
mean, as far
I
as
I mean,
so many different things that
I
have
would
happened.
say number one. I don't know enough about all sports to say number one, but I would
Right,
say.
right. Um,
All right,
but
you
yeah,
go.
I mean, 2016 Patriots. Before we go on to the next rank, I mean, we have to go as far as the overall matchup here, and I don't think it's really a question. One's a Super Bowl winning team that went 14-2, and the other is a team that barely made the playoffs, and at the end of the day did lose in the first round. It's not
And
that,
talent wise, everything wise, it's not close.
yeah. The 2016 Patriots, Akilesh has me beat here as far as a matchup, and his four beats my four any day of the week. So we're going to go with that. At number three, I'm going to go with a team that I didn't watch, but it's one of my favorite teams to learn about. And admittedly, this is a team that I didn't know too much about until about 2.5 years ago.
Mm,
But everything that I love about football, specifically, you guys know
mm,
me as more of the offensive guy compared to Akilesh, and
yeah.
more as the
Oh
defensive guy.
God, please don't do that.
And as far as a team that really revolutionized the passing game to the way that they did, as far as a team that, as far as my favorite style of play, the deep ball, the kind of just careless ways of just kind of throwing the ball recklessly around the field, just go long, that type of style. There's one team that really inspired all of this, has some of my favorite players of all time on this team. And then you look at defensively, probably my favorite coach to learn about in NFL history was the defensive line coach on this team. Akilesh, I'll have you guess them in a sec, but I want you guys to know about this defensive line. This defensive line, I love defensive lines because of how much they impact the game. I've seen it with my 49ers team year in and year out. But this defensive line had four All Pros on their defense: Earl Faison, Bill Hudson, Ernie Ladd, Ron Neri. Um, Akilesh, I would like you to guess who was the defensive line coach on this team.
Whoa. Say the names again.
Let's go. We'll say Earl Faison, Ernie Ladd, Bill Hudson, Ron Neri.
Bill Hudson. If you don't mind, I'll search up Bill Hudson. Uh, what the? If you don't mind me asking, you talking about the 1961 San Diego Chargers?
Yes, I am. I'm talking about the 1961.
What?
And to answer the question,
No
the
way!
defensive line head coach, or the
Wow,
defensive
Chuck.
line coach was Chuck Noll.
Wow.
Um,
Talk
and
about that now. And Al Davis was an offensive.
yeah,
Would
and
you look at that?
yeah,
Wow.
and this is what I love about this team. Pretty much all of my favorite trailblazers of the NFL are on this team. Everyone who was the blueprint of all my favorite things about the NFL was on this team. Chuck Noll and the development of different pass rushing moves on this team. Al Davis and the deep ball ways and the aggressive ways of that defense on this team. Sid Gilman, in my opinion, one of my probably one of my top 5 favorite coaches of all time
Mhm.
on this team. And this team was just dominant. 12-2 was their record. They were third in the league in offense in the AFL and first in the league in defense. They had, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, they had 11 Pro Bowlers on this team, which is just insane. Um, Dave Kocherek was their leading receiver, who is one of my favorite receivers from the 60s. Ron Mix, one of the most dominant tackles of all time. Just in general, this team, as far as the Chargers, I've always had a somewhat soft spot for them, and that might be hard to tell based on how much I trash talk Akilish on this channel. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, this team had the ability to just develop rookies unlike anything I've ever seen. Their ability to pretty much, get an entire stadium just with their hands up cheering over something that you would have never seen before was insane. And it really was the starting point for the Joe Namaths of the world, let alone the Roger Staubachs and the Terry Bradshaws, let alone the Brett Favres and Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes of the world. As far as West Coast offense, this wouldn't have happened had it not been for the system that Sid Gilman had put in place in the 1960s. As far as
Yeah.
the hard-hitting ways of the Chuck Knowles defense, that wouldn't have been the case without this 1961 Chargers defense. And for that reason, they are one of my favorite teams to learn about because everything starts with them, in my opinion. I think they're one of the most underrated teams in NFL history. And for me, that's why I have them here at my number three.
Man, that's a very interesting position to take. For me though, I'm gonna take. This is a very interesting. I don't think Yash would have thought about this, honestly. I don't think anybody would have thought about this for that matter. It's not a very popular team. It's not a team that you would ever think of as those great teams, pretty much ever,
Hmm.
right? It's a type of team where you have probably the greatest set of like a cornerback crew. No, you talk about the Legion of Boom. This was the Legion of Boom because before Legion of Boom ever existed. I mean, this was one of the best defensive back rooms that we might have ever seen, and probably also the most underrated defensive back rooms we've ever seen.
Yep. You had a 7, 5, 8, and 9 interception starters. And then you had a middle linebacker who also had 5 interceptions.
You know my team?
Oh, you're talking about your team. I thought you were talking still about the chart. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm talking about one of the greatest defensive back rooms I think we've ever seen. We just never talk about any of those guys right now. I'm talking
Mhm.
about one guy who, if we're being honest, for unfortunate reasons, had lived a longer period of time, could have become probably the greatest outside linebacker to ever play the game. I'm talking about one of my favorite coaches, personally my favorite coach to ever coach the game in Marty Schottenheimer. I'm going 1997 Kansas City Chiefs. 13
Ooh,
and 3 record, number one defense that year. You talk about 14 and a half points a game and 15 total offense, 23 points. You talk about their overall coaching staff. You have Mike McCarthy as a quarterback, Jimmy Ray coaching your running backs and tight ends, all Sanders assistant coaching and wide receivers. You got Kurt Schottenheimer on the defensive backs. You got Mike Solari offensive line, right? Now you have all of those things in account. When you look at the passing game, Elvis Grabek and Rich Gannon. That's all you got. And you still make a top 10 team out of that? For me, I mean, the reason why I love this team is because Marty Schottenheimer to me is, again, a coach I really resonate with. This team makes me resonate with him. I never got to see it in person or experience it, lifetime per se, right? But let me look at this class. Off the bat, you have Dave Sosset, who, as a left guard, was an all first team All Pro. You have Dale Carter, left side cornerback, 2 interceptions that year. You have James Hardy, another cornerback who was around, I think at that point, 37 years old. You just have so many guys on this team that are elite at what they do. Mark McMillan, 27, right? DB, 8 interceptions, 274 return yards off that, 3 pick sixes in 1 year, plus a forced fumble. I mean, the only thing this team is missing, and we all hate to say it, but it's number 58.
correct. Well, no, they
Other
had Derek Thomas.
they had, sorry, I don't have the chart with me right now. Uh,
Yeah, this was a relative down year for him, but yeah, I mean, he was still there. He had 9.5 sacks.
yeah, Derek Thomas, who had 9.5 sacks, but you still got to understand, this guy's 30 at that point, was injured for around almost half the season, and with all that being said, still rocked out. I mean, just again and again, just churned out number of sacks. This guy was an elite monster at his level, right? Just completely dominating. The defense was the best in the league. And you got to understand, the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl with Reggie White. They were in there. You talk about, the Ravens were building at that point, were getting there. They weren't close to number one. These guys were miles when it came to the number one defense in the NFL. And to hold the John Elway Broncos, one of the most elite offenses, to 14 points in the playoffs, unfortunately, they did lose because Schottenheimer always had that type of, playoff loss type deal at the end of the day. But still, that defense was elite like no other defense has ever seen before. The offense was also so good with really no talent on that hand. And then for me, ultimately, it's just this was the type of team that really showed who Schottenheimer was. To take something that normally would be, a 9-7 team, and to bring them to one of the best records in the NFL. For me, for some reason, it's one of my favorite teams ever.
That I mean, that is a I did not expect you to go 1997 Chiefs, but knowing your love for Marty Schottenheimer, I should have expected it at some point. It's a very good get and a very underrated team. Admittedly, one I don't know as much about, but
Fair.
certainly it is a team that absolutely deserves its spot for you, Akhilesh. And I can very much understand. As far as matchup goes, I think this is a really good matchup you and I have. 1961 Chargers versus 1997 Chiefs. And I actually want to come back to this because I think we can debate this as far as who can win this. But so the next one I'm gonna go with is number two. And I want before I say this, I want to give an honorable mention because my actual number two is another Niners team. I didn't want to make this whole list Niners teams because otherwise this would list, I don't want to make this
If you're
the
gonna
most
go what I
biased.
think you're gonna go with, I'm gonna be mad.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't want to bring up the Niners too much, so I left the Niners team off of it, and I left one of my favorite Niners teams off of it, that being the 2012 49ers. And that was excruciatingly painful for me, given the fact that this team has my favorite coach of all time, and Jim Harbaugh, has some of my favorite
Oh,
players of all time, and Patrick Willis, Navarro Bowman, Colin Kaepernick, Vernon Davis. Alden Smith when he was not being crazy off the field, Ahmad Brooks, I mean Deshaun Goldson, the list goes on. Joe Staley, Frank Gore. This team had so many of my favorite players. I wanted to put them on this list, but alas, this team was at a time where I was still learning a lot about football, so I didn't know as much about football. So it was
right.
really hard for me to build a true connection compared to other 49ers teams. So for that reason, I did leave them off the list. But for my number two team, I'm going to go with another team that I learned a lot about. And this was a team I learned a lot about from just purely watching their games on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
especially during COVID. I had nothing better to do than just watch a lot of NFL film. And for whatever reason, this team stuck with me. And that's the 2009 New Orleans Saints. Um, the New
Whoa.
Orleans, yeah. So for me, this New Orleans Saints team, there's one specific game that just stands out for me every time I watch it, and that is Week 6, if I'm not mistaken. They played against the Miami Dolphins, um, and the New Orleans Saints versus the Miami Dolphins. This was a game where Miami went up, if I'm not mistaken, 21 to nothing early on in
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the end of this first half, there was nothing really the Saints could do. And Drew Brees was essentially begging Sean Payton on the sideline to go and just get a QB sneak to get a touchdown. He can
Yeah.
somehow convince Sean Payton, who, somewhat is a very stern, very stubborn coach. And, they got that quarterback sneak to be a touchdown, got momentum in the second half. They got an interception early on in the third quarter, and from there, the New Orleans Saints just never looked back, and they outscored the Dolphins in the second half, something like 39 to 14.
Sheesh.
Incredible. When this team was offensively on its move, there was nothing you could do about them. They were just deep, deep, and deep. And I know that
Yeah.
most people will bring up Bountygate, and that is a fair argument when it comes to this team. Honestly, when it comes to just the entertainment factor of watching this team, I honestly don't care. I'm a guy who, when it comes to my defense, I do like a little bit of dirtiness. Do I like teams basically taking off the head of the opponent? Probably not.
Yeah.
Most definitely not. But I certainly like seeing some of the hard hits that the Saints were able to make uh, on a daily basis. Some of the hits that you get from guys like Jonathan Vilma, Scott Fujita, Will Smith, etc., etc. I should never say Fujita and etc. back to back. That came off really horribly. But regardless, this New Orleans Saints team was just really fun to watch. But for me specifically, it was the offense that really made this team that much more fun to watch. Reggie Bush, one of my favorite college players of all time, actually had a great year this year. 390 rushing yards and 335 receiving yards for a team
Mm-hmm.
that had 4 or 5 different running backs who were getting significant touches of ball. I'll never get old when it comes to listening to that story about how Sean Payton recommended his son to get Mike Bell on his fantasy football team, and then Mike Bell had a career year. Drew Brees obviously was one of the best that year. In my opinion, I would make an argument he should have won the MVP that year over Peyton
Mm-hmm.
Manning. That's a debate for a different day.
Okay.
but you got Marquez Colston, Devery Henderson, Jeremy Shockey. Every time they touched the ball, they were making a play that just dropped my jaw. And that's really the theme of the story is the fact that every play that every player made on this team just dropped my jaw every time I saw it. And this
Yeah.
team never ceased to stun me. Whether that was Drew Brees basically tackling a Washington player, forcing a fumble, and causing a Saints touchdown after throwing an interception, or whether it was Tracy Porter's interception in the Super Bowl. There was just an inspiring story around this team rallying around its city
Hmm.
and helping them after Hurricane Katrina, and especially after now being in Louisiana for the last 6 months and seeing how much that team impacted them.
Mm.
It makes that team that much more one of my favorites to learn about. It's just that inspiring of a team. And for that reason, they've got to be my number two.
Yeah, look, the 2009 team is a team that I really like. Definitely not one of my favorites. Like in the sense, like I'm not gonna be like, oh, I really love this team, especially not number two. But it's a team that was an offensive juggernaut, and makes sense why Yash would love it that much. Because I mean, it is a Sean Payton offense. He took, I mean, you talk about a West Coast offense in a modern form. That's really the perfection that Drew Brees got it to be. So yeah, I mean, 100% agree with you on that end. But for me, I'm gonna go in the complete other extreme. This team was horrible offensively. To be completely frank, was horrible offensively. I mean, really only had only two reliable people on offense, three reliable people on offense to keep their team afloat. I mean, you talk about probably a Hall of Fame tackle, a could have been Hall of Fame running back had he stayed healthy, and a Hall of Fame tight end. That's about all they had. The rest wasn't that defense. Any guess?
I think I know, yes, the 2000 Ravens.
100%. 2000 Baltimore Ravens. I mean, you talk about Marvin Lewis as a defensive coordinator, goes up to Shannon Sharp and says, just get me three. Three? What do you mean three? I don't even need to be on the field. Three? Yeah, just give me three. We're good from there. That's literally what it was. I mean, this team was, you talk about like physical. This is a team that brought you physical, team that was nasty, team that thrived in being nasty, team that just hit you in the face and didn't apologize for it. In fact, laughed at your face after doing so and then did it again just to show that they could do it again. It's just, I mean, the defensive line was incredible. You talk about, like, we always talk about the Ray Lewis. That defensive line was, oh my goodness, incredible. They could defend the run, they could get after the quarterback. The tackles would fear looking at that defensive line. I mean, you talk about the for me, you know what it is, Yash, that like just made me like this team so much. Number one, Ray Lewis is
Hello?
bar Ronnie favorite player to ever play the game. Right? He's
Right.
probably my second favorite player to ever play the game. He's the one that like I saw and I said that's a leader of men.
Hmm.
That's the first time I'd ever seen leadership to that level. Like today, we got, in all fairness, compared to Ray Lewis, a bunch of babies because Ray Lewis was a leader of men. He could be talking to preschoolers and he would get them on a football field ready to just, I mean, I don't know what they would go after. Gummy bears? I don't know, right? He would just be ready to rumble, right? You could put him in a WWE match or go to the finest patisserie in Paris to eat, croissants in a most dignified manner. He would attack that like in a leadership form. We gotta take the bread. We gotta consistently in a precise manner. He would do that because that's Ray Lewis. I mean, he just an amazing human being from that standpoint. To go through what he did in 2000, along with everybody else, with all the amazing young cornerback class that they had, by the way, also. No one talks about that as well. For him to lead that crew at such a young age, in all fairness, for his right, to be the only reason why they were relevant in the NFL was that defense. For me, that's the first time I saw leadership and team defense be the sole reason for the Super Bowl. You talk about the players on that team: Ray Lewis, Rod Woodson, Shannon Sharp, Jonathan Ogden. I mean, this is a class beyond class that you see here with the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, for me, I've never ever seen a defensive unit work together as one individual. I've never seen it to that extent in my life. And yes, I don't believe it's the greatest defense ever. To me, it is still the 1985 Bears, but this is second. This is god close to beating those 1985 Bears.
I mean, I have nothing at all to say. I think you nailed it on the dot when it comes to that Ravens as far as a, review of them. I'm not, there's one thing you missed, and I'm not going to let you go free without mentioning this. Shout out to Tony Siragusa, the Goose, one of my favorite defense tackles of all time. Amazing human being. I've had friends who've got to meet him. Apparently, just incredibly hospitable.
Yeah,
And
was an absolute monster on the field.
100%.
Not play wise, not play wise, not just play wise. He's a monster, a
Right.
living monster.
Menace on the field, the
Yeah,
nicest guy you'll ever meet off the field.
off the field.
Rest
I
in
mean,
peace to him.
yeah,
Unfortunately, he passed away 3 years ago, but just an awesome player, and someone who has to always be mentioned when it comes to that Ravens defense. Doesn't get talked about enough.
right.
Um, but yeah, I mean this defense. The thing about this defense that always impressed me is they were a team defense. They were not based off of
Same.
individual things. The only guy who had an individually unparalleled season was Ray Lewis. Rod Woodson was having a relative down year in comparison to the rest of his, all-time greatness. Um,
Sure.
he
But that's
was
what's
the
crazy.
second
But I
best
think he
player.
had like 3 interceptions or something.
Yeah, exactly. And then you guys got guys like Chris McAllister, Dwayne Starks, Rob Burnett, Sam Adams. These were guys who were great.
Wait, actually, Yash, Rod Woodson had 4 interceptions that season
Correct.
and 77 tackles.
Correct.
If that's a low for him, I
Exactly.
mean, come
That's I
on.
mean that's the point. That's what I'm trying to make. I mean that's how great Rod Woodson was. But
Yeah,
to make this point that I'm trying to say is, you look at the rest of this defense. I mean, they're guys who had great years. Robert Nett had a great year. Sam Adams had a great year. Dwayne Starks, Chris McAllister had great years. Peter Bulware had a pretty nice year. Michael McCrary had a great year, but none of them were per se standouts. This wasn't the
right,
1976 Steelers where you had 10 Pro Bowlers, where your entire defensive secondary was all Pro Bowlers. This isn't the Legion of Boom Seahawks defense of the 1985 Bears from that standpoint.
right.
This was just a team that played great team defense. And, that really always stands out to me as far as this team goes. Um, but certainly, I would say I would. This is honestly a very interesting matchup. I honestly want to know what you think about who would win this matchup, because I feel like this Saints team offensively, I mean, defensively, they were still pretty good. So I think they can match up well. But obviously, this Ravens team is one of the very few defenses who can
Yash,
single-handedly carry.
Yash, I'm not putting anybody, not one person. I don't care what offense it is. You could throw me a 2007 Patriots offense. I'm not putting it above those Ravens. I think that Ravens defense can take down anybody. So, the, I would say the final score if those two teams played 14-10, Ravens take it.
I'll take your word for that because, like I said, a very interesting matchup. Drew Brees is going to have more interceptions in this game and a lower completion percentage by far than any game he's ever had in his career.
Yeah.
Um, and as my voice is starting to kind of lose it on camera,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean this team in general. I mean that's how great this Ravens defense was. They carried everyone, and they did not really even have great QB play. Their quarterback was Trent
Not
Dilfer.
at all.
Um, but
Trent Dilfer.
yeah, Trent Dilfer. But hey, shout out to Trent Dilfer. We like him on this channel, somewhat. But the 2000 Ravens,
No,
I'll
I
give.
mean he. I mean, you look at those. I remember watching as a kid those like top 10 high
Mhm, right,
schoolers
right,
coming
right. Yeah,
together
yeah.
with Tua and everything. I mean, he's a great guy, obviously, but you know,
He's interesting as a head coach with UAB. Let's just put it
yeah,
that way. Um, but certainly he did his job with this Ravens team, and the Ravens defense did the rest. Um, I can very much see the Ravens beating the 2009 Saints. But at number one, we're gonna go with a Niners team. Shocker. Um, and
you
this is
go
a
with what I.
and this is a team that for me I have the most emotional connection to. right? This is a team that, on top of it, was a really good team, a team that went to the Super Bowl, mind you. Um, a team that, as a backstory, and I'll get to the backstory in a sec, was basically my first, really light as far as maybe the Niners are not screwed, because we have to remember the last 4 years prior to that, the Niners went through Jim Tom Sula, Chip Kelly, and the tumultuous first year of Kyle Shanahan as a head coach at a time where I didn't even really look at Kyle Shanahan as anything good. Um, and I know we've talked about how both of us think he's a little bit overrated, but certainly he's a much better coach than I thought of him at the time back in
Yeah.
2017. Um, we went through all of that. We went through Jimmy G tearing his ACL. We went through Jerick McKinnon signing a $28 million deal as a running back and not playing a single game for us for 3 years. Um, we went through receiver after receiver. We went through having to see Marquise Goodwin. The most uplifting thing was a bittersweet moment was Marquise Goodwin scoring a touchdown in memory of his late son who was born stillborn. Um, as painful as it was to see a guy like him, as nice as he is, crying like that on the football field. We went from that to the Super Bowl contending window. And that whole year in general for me was just a rough, rough year. So to see a Niners team that inspired me as much as I felt I was also having a great year, it was perfect for me to see that Niners team truly overcome the adversity of the past 5 years and make it to the Super Bowl. And for me, that reason, I'm going to go with the 2019 49ers. Um, has some of my favorite players that I've ever had for the Niners, Fred Warner, George Kittle. That goes without saying. Um, you can hate on Jimmy Garoppolo forever, but he always still holds a special place in my heart as far as what he
Yeah.
did for the 49ers, getting them back on track. Um, we talk about that Saints 49ers game where George Kittle had one of the best runs after a catch I've ever seen. Just basically carrying four Saints on his back. Joe Staley,
Yeah.
how impressive he was. That whole defense, the game Nick Bosa had against the Cleveland Browns, DeForest Buckner and how great he was, Eric Armstead having a breakout year, the games against Seattle, both of them, even the one we lost. I remember betting against my friends so many times that the Niners would win, trash talking. That whole year was just so much fun as far as enjoying football. And it really took my love from football from here to really here. That whole year, I became so much more obsessed with football just because of my obsession of wanting this team to win and seeing this team really help me uplift myself at one was probably you know, one of my worst years prior to that in 2019, just as far
Wow.
as where I was in an emotional state. So to have this team overcome the adversity that they did from the Tom Sula years to the Chip Kelly years and go to that, it was an unbelievable time for me. And for that reason, and you add in the dominance that they had defensively, offensively, they are my
Yeah.
favorite team of all time. And it's going to be hard for any team to really beat them.
I mean, man, uh, you went on an extremely emotional one there. Mine is not as emotionally connected, but for me, it's the Niners, and I was afraid you were gonna say this team. 1984 49ers for me is my favorite team ever. That team for me is the most perfect blend of offensive explosion and of defensive absolute horror. I mean, if you look at that team, Ronnie Lott as your safety or as your cornerback, whoever it is, George Seifert as your defensive coordinator, Joe Montana. I mean, you got the entire crew, and this is when Bill Walsh is in his prime. I mean, the offensive jet power that he's able to put is miles beyond what anybody could ever think, right? The offensive efficiency, being able to throw that ball, to go with Darren Marino coming into your house at Stanford University, all on the line. And Dan Marino, 48 touchdowns, 5,000 plus 40, maybe 4,800 passing yards, or no, 5,000 yards passing. And he has this and that, and you got the Coopers, and everything's on the line. You absolutely smother and destroy that and I mean, for me, this team, the reason why it's the favorite is because that's the first time I've seen a football team be able to perfectly execute offense and defense synchronously. And all and everybody, the only thing they talk about is winning the Super Bowl. The only thing they ever talked about that entire season was we got to win it all. We got to win it all. We got to win it all. I mean, to have that as almost a, you know, like on your board, it's just win, 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 win the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. Then to do it and just have that relentless, almost feel or aggression. We need to win. We need to win. We need to win. I mean, it's I've never seen a team that can be that dominant on both sides of the ball, and over all of that, still be doubted to win the Super Bowl. There's not one team that won 15-1, and people sit here and say, I don't know if they'll win the Super Bowl, man. I don't think they got a chance. This is the only team that's ever gone through that. And for me, more than anything else, Ronnie Lott became my favorite player because of watching highlights of his season in 1984. When he hit Marino on that inside screenplay, there was a screenplay where the running back gets it and then kind of moves. Ronnie Lott came and smacked Dan Marino all the way down to the ground. He was ideally supposed to blitz, so he came and blitzed, and he hit, the living anything out of this guy.
Correct.
That hit for me, along with every single tackle that was made by every single linebacker, you know, Joe Montana just going in there, absolutely dominating the spread. I mean, 3 touchdowns in what, the first quarter? I mean, he absolutely dominated that game like anything else.
Correct.
Respect to Dan Marino, one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play, but for that defense to do what it did that day, to shut down probably the most prolific quarterback in NFL history, you talk about a, you talk about just dominance to otherworldly level and still have to come and fight back. That's for me, you don't put anything else above that. For me, the 1984 49ers are for my favorite team.
You can run, but you cannot hide from the San Francisco 49ers, Akhilesh Srivatsa.
You
And
can't. You can't. It's the truth. That
and
is the truth. For me though, I want to mention something though. 1986 Giants were in consideration for the top four
I
because
thought you were going to say that.
that's
Yeah,
the
I'm
first
surprised
time
you didn't
I
say
saw
that.
Bill Belichick employ a defense. But at the same time, I can't put it over the 16 Patriots. That's when I first fell in love in football. Second, I can't put them over the 99. I could put them ideally with the 97, Schottenheimer team, but that's my favorite coach ever. And then you got to go with 2000 Ravens for me. You don't put them anything else above that. If we had top five, man, that would have come in at five.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's just go. Do you have like a list of honorable mentions or anything like that?
For me, 97 Giants are up there as an honorable mention. 2018 Patriots are there because that's the first time I followed a full season of football.
Right. Okay.
Those are two probably the only honorable mentions. 1986 Giants and then the 2018 Patriots. The 85 Bears are not an honorable mention for me, but I just recognize them as one of the greatest teams to ever play the game. I necessarily never loved those teams. I
Mhm.
liked it. I just never fell in love. Not like I did with the Ravens or the Giants, for that matter.
Okay. So for me, I have quite a few honorable mentions actually.
Okay.
I have a list of them. First off, let's get off all the Niners teams off the list. 2011, 2012 49ers, 2013 49ers, 2021 to 23 Niners. Those are all the Niners teams that I have from my time watching. The 1984 49ers, you mentioned them. The 1994 49ers, 1998, 2001, and 1989 49ers. Those are all the 49ers teams I have from the dynastic days. And then one more, I have the 1956 49ers. Random one, but there are a lot of some of my favorite players to learn about and had some interesting highlights that I always found myself coming back to. So for
Okay.
that, for me, they're up there for some of my favorite teams. You also got the 1962 Packers, the 1964 Colts, the 1986 New England Patriots. Yeah, no, sorry, excuse me. Yes, 1986 New England Patriots.
Mm.
Not the team that went to the Super Bowl actually.
The year
Um,
after.
the year after, correct. We also got the 1991 Philadelphia Eagles, the 1998
Yeah,
Minnesota
that's a good one.
Vikings, one of the best defenses of all time, one of the best offenses of all time. You mentioned the 2016 Patriots. Fully agree there. Also, I'm going to mention the 2007 Patriots. Obviously, you know I'm an offensive guy. Tom Brady and
Yeah.
Randy Moss are just incredibly fun to watch on any highlight tape. If you're talking about some of the greatest defense of all time, give me the 1976 Steelers. I'm also going to mention the 1950 Browns. And then finally, I mentioned this team earlier, but the 1993 Houston Oilers have to be on this list for the same reason as the 2021 Raiders. But those are my honorable mentions. I think one other team, I'm not sure if I already mentioned them, 2013 Denver Broncos. First team I really, truly
Hmm.
captivated me and really got me into football to that degree. The game that really told me, okay, I want to start watching football like a lot was the Broncos game they played against the Cowboys. Final score was 51-48. Still remember like that like it was yesterday, and that was 12 years ago. Now I feel old. But um yeah, those are my honorable mentions. As far as this matchup between the 1984 49ers and the 2019 49ers, goes without mentioning, the 1984 49ers are going to beat the 2019 Niners every time.
Yeah.
I want to go back to the 1961 Chargers versus the 1997 Chiefs. Um, I do think that at the end of the day, although the 97 Chiefs are a more modern team,
Hmm.
I do think that based on the fact that coaching wise, based on relative down years of some of the best players on the 97 Chiefs, based on some of the injuries, I do think I'm going to go with the 1961 Chargers, and I
I
do.
agree. I agree. Because the thing for me is this: the 61 it may have not been as modern, and also honestly, it was probably a more elevated form of what was there in 61, right? With Sid Gilman. But
Correct.
at the same time, you just look at the injured level. You also look at the fact that at the end of the day, you know, when you look at the 97 Chiefs, it's the best form of coaching, but not necessarily the best team. And when you look at the coaching staff that they had on 61, it factors all in. So, I mean, it would be another close one, I would say, for me personally. But like I said, 14-10 for the Ravens against Saints. I'm going to say like maybe 23-21 here, and I would say the 61 takes it.
I agree here. As far as their final bracket goes, it's 1984 49ers, 2000 Ravens, 1961 Chargers, 2016 Patriots. Honestly, I think we can knock this out pretty quickly. The 1984 49ers beat the 2016 Patriots. Both are two of the greatest teams of all times, but the
Yeah,
1984 49ers are in a tier of their own as far as every
yeah,
other team here. They are one of the top five teams of all time, maybe
ever.
one of the top three teams of all time. That's
Yeah.
a list for a different day, however. But the 1984 49ers beat the 2016 Patriots, in my opinion. As far as the 2000 Ravens versus the 1961 Chargers, I also think the 2000 Ravens will beat the 1961 Chargers. That
Hmm.
defense is going to beat, with as modern as they are, they're going to beat an offense that's still pretty much an experiment at that in the
True.
1961 Chargers. Obviously, we have to remember this was in an eight-team AFL, and they were far from the best team in that league offensively. They were third in the league offensively, not first, as revolutionary as they were. So for me, the 2000 Ravens definitely beats the 1961 Chargers. I think the final score of that game is probably close to 19-7. Um,
Okay.
as far as the 1984 to 2016 team, I actually think that would be a high scoring game. I'm thinking 38-35. I mean, we're talking at the end of the day, two of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. It's going to be a shootout. It's going to come down to the quarterbacks. Um, and then as far as one versus two, I mean, Akilesh, I'll let you say this because I think you know the answer.
84. That's all I got to
Yeah,
say. I mean,
1984 49ers.
it'll be close. It'll be close, but it's 10-7. 84 takes it.
I agree
It's not going to be a
100%.
blowout, but it's going to be, 10-7. 84 takes it.
100%. But that does it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was a very fun episode for both me and
Yeah.
Akhilesh. And make sure to like and subscribe. We got more content coming for you very soon. But until next time, we'll see you later. Peace.